Welcome, my soft-thinking listener. You've found yourself in the company of the Sleepy Sloth once again. A slow, scientifically minded fellow who enjoys facts, food, and things that barely change at all. I must tell you something before we begin. Today, I consider myself a scientist in the earliest traces of food preparation. A scientist who is almost always correct, except for those few times when I am not. But even then, I prefer to drift gently onward, rather than fuss over it. Because what truly matters is the information itself. Before I start, please, let me know. What is the most boring thing you would secretly love hearing about? Let me know gently in the comments. Now, let us begin today's episode of the sleepiest origins of ancient foods, where charred crumbs and fermentation dance in the foggy stillness of prehistory. Let us begin, ever so slowly. In the dusty breath of time around 14,400 BCE, long before wheat was planted in rows, a small hearth flickered in the black desert of northeastern Jordan. At the Shubaika 1 site, archaeologists uncovered charred remnants of something special. Flatbread. Not agriculture yet, but cooking and grinding. Wild barley and club rush were crushed between stones, then mixed, perhaps with water, and pressed onto hot surfaces. These weren't puffy loaves. They were thin, irregular discs. Charred edges. Scattered crumbs. The evidence comes from archaeological layers predating formal farming by nearly 4,000 years. This early bread, or bread-like thing, tells us that humans were experimenting with flour before they domesticated grains. They gathered. They ground. They baked. All slowly, with no written recipes, no ceramic pots. Just stone, ash, and hands. It was food, but also knowledge. And the flatbread, blackened and crumbling in ancient ash, whispers the earliest chapter of carbohydrate comfort. Now we drift softly to around 13,000 BC, where hot food was desired. But metal pots did not yet exist. And so, people turned to stone. In North America, Europe, and parts of Asia, early hunter-gatherers practiced stone boiling. First, a pit was dug, or a watertight basket made from bark or hide. Then, fire-heated stones, river-rounded, often igneous, were dropped in to heat the contents. Water boiled. Fat rendered. Roots softened. Sometimes, stones shattered from thermal stress, leaving telltale cracked fragments at archaeological sites. Burned pits lined with char and cracked rock provide silent evidence of this cooking method. It wasn't fast. Each batch required heating, lifting, transferring. But it worked. Boiling meant stews, soups, nutrient extraction, especially from tough meats or plant fibers. This technique appears independently in multiple regions, long before the first ceramic vessels. It was practical, repetitive, and brilliant in its simplicity. Heating stones, placing them in water, waiting, and repeating. A method born from patience and fire. Around 12,000 BCE, as the Ice Age began its slow retreat, humans around the world embraced the earth itself as an oven. Pit roasting, or what we might now call earth ovens. In North America, the Pacific, Australia, even the Levant, people dug shallow pits, lined them with hot stones, layered in food, roots, meats, tubers, and covered it all with soil, leaves, or bark. Then, they waited. Slow cooking. Ambient steaming. A full-day endeavor. What remains are scorched stones, heat-altered soils, charcoal scatterings. No recipe survives, but the method is known from its universal simplicity. Fire below. Insulation above. and long, slow heat in between. This was not high cuisine, but high ingenuity. Earth ovens allowed for even cooking and minimal attention. And the food, wrapped in warmth and time, emerged soft, smoky, and safe. A technique so useful, it appeared in isolation across continents. Because no matter the culture, the ground could always cook, if you knew how to heat it. By around 10,000 BCE, in the western parts of Asia, early agricultural communities began not only to gather grain, but to simmer it. Porridge. Archaeological finds, like grinding stones with embedded cereal starches, and burnt residues in early cooking vessels, point toward the preparation of cooked cereal mushes. Wild einkorn and barley were ground on saddle querns or grinding slabs. Then the coarse flour was added to water, and warmed. Not quite boiling at first, as ceramics were still evolving, but warm enough to soften. Eventually, with the rise of pottery, porridge became easier. It was basic, unspiced, uneventful, but filling. It transformed grain from dry seed to soft sustenance. Porridge doesn't demand slicing, or roasting, or seasoning. It only asks for patience. A small flame, a steady stir, and the knowledge that grain, plus water, plus heat, will always yield something edible. Something quiet. Something warm. Around 9000 BCE, in the Near East, fruit began to linger. Not for fresh eating, but for drying. Sun-dried fruit, figs and dates in particular, became one of humanity's first intentional preservation methods. Archaeobotanical studies from sites like Gilgal in the Jordan Valley show evidence of fig storage, with seeds and carbonized skins preserved in early Neolithic layers. These were not random discards. They were sorted, possibly sliced, and left in the open air to dry. No salt. No sugar. Just sunlight. And time. Dates, with their natural sugars, lent themselves equally well to this treatment. Dried fruit stores well, needs no pot, and resists spoilage. It is chewy, dense, transportable. Sweetness that lasts months, not hours. And so, in baskets or on rocks, under the soft sun of early farming villages, fruit transformed. Not by machines, but by time. And the sun, always generous, always slow. Next, we float to Southeast Asia, where around 8000 BC, fermentation began to emerge. Not from science, but from time. Fish, layered with rice and salt, pressed under leaves or stones. Fermented fish. Not a pleasant smell, but a preservation technique. And more importantly, a microbial symphony that only plays if you wait. We know this not from written recipes, but from comparative ethnography and later traditions. In areas of modern-day Vietnam, Thailand, and southern China, high-salt fermentations preserve fish in a slow, enzymatic process that releases amino acids like glutamate. Modern sauces such as prok, pla ra, and bagung may descend from these ancient methods. The salt creates an anaerobic environment. The rice sometimes contributes wild yeasts or lactic acid bacteria. And over months, the texture breaks down into paste. While no direct 8000 BCE residue is available for these sauces, archaeological logic and dietary need suggest that salting and pressing fish, especially in tropical climates, was an inevitable solution to spoilage. These proto-ferments lived quietly, in pots and pits, long before language caught up. All they required was salt, weight, and waiting. Jiahu, in central China, gives us our next flavorless marvel. Around 7000 to 6600 BC, they brewed a mixed beverage. of rice, honey, and fruit. Residue analysis from burial vessels, identified through advanced methods such as mass spectrometry and liquid chromatography, reveals chemical fingerprints of tartaric acid, from wild grapes or hawthorn, beeswax, from honey, and starch conversion products, from rice. This combination suggests a complex fermentation, blending sugars, fruit acids, and starchy grains in a single vessel. It was likely cloudy, still, lightly alcoholic. Nothing like modern wine or beer. This was not distilled, clarified, or aged. Just a microbial meeting. A slow celebration of ambient yeast. Fermentation was not yet fully understood, but it was encouraged through habit and observation. The bubbling surface, the changing aroma, the light, warming effects, all hinted at a quiet transformation. Scholars such as Patrick McGovern have reconstructed this brew chemically, linking it to a broad East Asian tradition of mixed fermentations. It was the drink of early ceremony. Not festive, not fancy, but slow and real. Olive oil comes next. In the Levant, around 6500 BC, people began pressing olives. Not for fun, not for flavor, but for fat. Evidence from the site of Kfar Samir and others includes crushed olive pits, olive residue inside pottery, and flint tools that may have aided in pulping. The oil, once extracted, was likely stored in ceramic jars or skins, its golden hue darkening over time. This wasn't the gentle drizzle of modern salads. It was a dense, valuable source of calories and fuel. Domesticated olives had not yet fully emerged. These were likely wild or semi-domesticated oleasters, yet even these produced oil when pressed. Early pressing techniques may have involved stone basins or rudimentary beam presses. The oil oxidized quickly in the open, so careful storage was essential. Later, oil would become sacred, medicinal, and ceremonial. But here, in the early Neolithic, it was simply sustenance. Pressed slowly, from bitter fruit, stored away from light, and poured sparingly. Its story began in silence, and continued for thousands of years. Around 6000 BCE, in the soft hills of the South Caucasus, what is now Georgia, grape juice began to change. Not through invention, but through quiet observation. Archaeologists uncovered ceramic jars, fevri, lined with beeswax and buried in earth, containing residues with high concentrations of tartaric acid, a biomarker for grape fermentation. These jars, some more than a meter tall, were likely used for spontaneous fermentation, grape skins, juice, and stems sealed together and left to bubble slowly underground. The evidence from sites like Gadakrili Gora and Shulaveris Gora suggests this was deliberate, not accidental. Wild Vitis vinifera grapes were crushed, and over time, fermentation transformed sugar into alcohol. This was not yet celebratory wine, not yet pressed and filtered, but the process was set in motion. The tannins preserved, the acidity stabilized, and the outcome, a tart, dry liquid, buried for months, waiting in darkness. Wine began not as luxury, but as storage. Preservation through fermentation. Aging without intent. Just juice. Turned slow and still. Into history. Around 5800 to 5000 BCE, on the sweeping grasslands of Central Asia and in parts of the Near East, humans began something softly revolutionary. They began to ferment milk. The exact dating of yogurt-like products is delicate, because soft dairy leaves few hard traces, but the logic of microbial transformation emerges alongside the earliest dairying. Once animals like sheep and goats were domesticated and milked, it was only a matter of time, perhaps only hours, before ambient lactic acid bacteria began their work, Without refrigeration, milk spoiled fast. But under the right warmth, with the right strains, it curdled into something thick, tangy, and stable. The bacteria Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus are known today, but ancient microbial cultures likely varied. Unlike cheese, yogurt doesn't require rennet. It requires warmth, patience, and a vessel. In skins, jars, or shallow pits, milk became something easier to digest, slower to spoil, and richer in flavor. The process was accidental at first. But once understood, it became cherished. A soft tang, a thickened texture, a sign that milk had not gone bad, but had simply changed into something safer. Between 5550–200 BCE, near the Vistula River in Poland and across parts of the Balkans, people began to drain milk. Not to discard it, but to separate its curds. Cheese. The evidence is quiet but persuasive: perforated ceramic pots, like colanders, bearing residues of milk lipids, and dating to the Neolithic. Chemical analysis confirms the fat signatures left behind. These were not cheese wheels or aged rinds, but fresh curds, gently separated from whey. Rennet was likely not used at this time, meaning the milk was probably acid coagulated, either from souring or the addition of acidic fruits or plant extracts. The resulting curds were soft, perhaps crumbly, easy to eat and store. Cheese offered a remarkable transformation: it preserved milk's nutrients in portable form, reduced lactose, and could be made without metal tools or elaborate equipment. It was a soft technology, simple but vital. Drained through clay, shaped by hand, eaten quickly or salted for keeping. And in those holes, in those little perforations, the ancient world whispered, cheese. Around 5000 BCE, in the lowlands of the Near East and parts of Mesopotamia, a richer transformation began. Milk, churned. Not by machine, not even by paddle, but by motion. Butter. The act of separating cream from milk was a quiet art. Let milk sit. Let cream rise. Skim it off. Then agitate. In skins, in jars, or even simply by shaking a bag while walking. Iconographic depictions of butter churning appear centuries later in Mesopotamian and Egyptian art, but the process itself almost certainly predates these records. Chemical traces of milk fat in pottery suggest butter was part of the early dairying suite. It was not salted, not aged, just fat. Soft and golden. Used in food, in ritual, in lamps. Unlike cheese or yogurt, butter required a deliberate act of transformation, a churning, a waiting for solids to clump, for buttermilk to separate. It was luxury by accident. Energy preserved. Sunlight in a smearable form. And in each churn, each soft fold of fat, lay the slow, gentle movement. From liquid to solid. From wild milk to nourishment. Around 5000 BCE, in the region stretching from West Asia to parts of ancient China, people discovered the ancient art of pickling and brining. The evidence is subtle. Ceramic vessels contain residues of salt and organic acids, and ethnographic analogies suggest that burying vegetables or fruits in salty water or fermenting liquids was already habitual. This method preserved food in times before refrigeration or drying, allowing surplus crops to last through lean seasons. Brining creates an environment hostile to spoilage microbes but friendly to lactic acid bacteria, which ferment sugars into mild acids. This fermentation lowers pH, creating tangy flavors and extending shelf life. While pinpointing the exact origins is difficult, due to the fragile nature of organic residues and limited direct textual evidence, the widespread use of salt in fermentation in ancient settlements shows pickling as a natural, practical innovation. It was neither quick nor easy. But it was effective. a slow, controlled dance of salt, time, and microbes. Around 4500 BCE, across the broad lands of Eurasia, honey, that golden gift of bees, found a new purpose beyond sweetness. Mead, honey fermented with water, became a quietly celebrated drink. Archaeological chemical residue analyses of pottery jars from sites such as Rügen Island in Germany and elsewhere reveal biomarkers consistent with fermented honey. Textual references to mead appear in later Bronze Age and Iron Age cultures, but the fermentation of honey likely began much earlier, based on the natural availability of wild honey and water. This early mead would have been a simple, still beverage, its alcohol content low to moderate, with the fermentation relying on wild yeasts and bacteria naturally present in the environment. Mead was not bubbly or refined, but a slow transformation, a mingling of sweetness, water, and microbial action, resulting in an ancient fermented drink that could last longer than fresh honey and offered a soft warmth when consumed. It was both medicine and pleasure, in the gentlest possible way. By around 4000 BCE, in ancient Egypt, the daily ritual of bread baking quietly evolved into something more complex. Sourdough, a natural leavening process, was in use. Evidence includes bakery remains, grinding stones, and iconography showing bread makers and ovens. Residue analyses reveal that the dough fermented with wild yeasts and lactobacilli, producing carbon dioxide that leavened bread, causing it to rise slowly before baking. Unlike flat unleavened breads, sourdough breads were porous and soft inside. The microbial communities developed naturally from the environment, on grains, in the air, and on the baker's hands, and were nurtured by repeated use of dough starters. This fermentation improved digestibility and flavor. Though no written recipe survives from this time, the continuity of baking techniques in Egypt, preserved in tomb paintings and texts, shows sourdough's importance. The bread was slow risen, warm, and comforting, an early edible masterpiece of natural microbiology. Around 3800 BCE, in Mesopotamia, stew began its long, quiet reign. Archaeological pottery shards reveal residues containing animal fats, cereal grains, and pulses, indicating combined cooking of meat with cereals or legumes. Though written recipes would come later in cuneiform tablets, these early stews were likely slow simmered over fire or coals, blending flavors and nutrients. This simple cooking method extracted calories efficiently from tough meat and fibrous plants alike. The stew was not uniform, recipes varied by availability. But the principle was consistent: mix, heat, and weight. In pots or jars, ingredients melded over hours or days. The stew offered warmth and sustenance, not in haste but in slow, savory collaboration, an early ancestor of countless communal meals. It was a quiet testament to human ingenuity, patience, and comfort in food. By 3500 BCE, in South Asia, the transformation of butter into something more stable began. Ghee, clarified butter, became a culinary and ritual staple. While textual evidence describing ghee appears in later Vedic literature, the tradition likely arose alongside pastoralism and dairying archaeology that date back to the Indus Valley civilization. The process involved gently heating butter to separate milk solids and water, leaving behind pure fat that resists spoilage longer at ambient temperatures. Ghee's nutty aroma, golden color, and higher smoke point made it valuable in cooking and ceremony. Archaeological traces, along with ethnographic continuity among Indian communities, support an ancient origin. Ghee is slow to make. It requires careful heating, skimming, and cooling. But its endurance, both physical and cultural, has outlasted millennia. It is the essence of butter, purified and patient, waiting to nurture both body and tradition. Around 5000 BCE, in regions spanning West Asia and ancient China. The practice of pickling and brining quietly took hold. Archaeological evidence, including chemical residues found in pottery shards, hints at the preservation of vegetables and possibly fruits using saltwater solutions. While direct proof is elusive, because organic material often degrades, ethnographic comparisons with traditional societies reveal that soaking food in brine inhibits harmful bacteria and fosters lactic acid fermentation. This process extends the shelf life of seasonal produce and enriches flavor subtly over time. Pickling and brining became indispensable for early communities without refrigeration, allowing surplus harvests to be stored and consumed during lean periods. Though it's difficult to pinpoint exact origins, the technique's ancient roots lie in simple, deliberate preservation, salt, water, patience, and nature's quiet chemistry. Around 4500 BCE, scattered across Eurasia, honey found a new role as the key ingredient in one of humanity's earliest fermented beverages, mead. Archaeological findings, including chemical residue analyses from pottery jars in northern Europe and the Caucasus, detect biomarkers like methylglyoxal and other compounds indicative of fermented honey. Although explicit textual mentions of mead appear only in later Bronze and Iron Age records, the natural availability of wild honey and water suggests that spontaneous fermentation likely occurred much earlier. Mead produced at this time would have been a still, mildly alcoholic drink, relying on wild yeasts to convert sugars into alcohol. The result was neither sparkling nor highly refined, but a slow, gentle transformation of sweetness into warmth, a nourishing elixir born of time, microbes, and simple ingredients. By around 4000 BCE, in ancient Egypt, the art of bread making evolved to include leavening, primarily through natural sourdough fermentation. Archaeological evidence includes bakery remains and iconography depicting ovens and bread production, alongside residue analyses confirming the presence of wild yeasts and lactobacilli involved in fermentation. Bakers maintained and reused starter dough, cultivating microbial communities that cause dough to rise through carbon dioxide release, resulting in lighter, airier bread. This natural fermentation improved the bread's flavor, texture, and digestibility without added commercial yeast. Sourdough was a staple, integral to daily life and ritual. The slow process of fermentation was neither rushed nor forced, but gently nurtured, an ancient, edible symbiosis between humans and microbes in the Nile Valley's warm climate. Around 3800 BCE, in Mesopotamia, the earliest forms of stew began to simmer in clay pots. Chemical residue analysis from pottery fragments reveals mixtures of animal fats, cereals, and legumes cooked together. Although detailed recipes emerged only in later cuneiform texts, these early stews likely combined available grains and pulses with meat, slowly heated over fire. The process tenderized tough ingredients and melded flavors over hours, providing caloric and nutritional efficiency. Stews represented practical, communal food, reliant on time and gentle heat rather than speed or complexity. This culinary approach demonstrated early humans' understanding of the benefits of slow cooking in food combination, setting the stage for millennia of savory, slow-simmered dishes that nourish body and spirit alike. By about 3500 BC, in South Asia, the transformation of butter into ghee, or clarified butter, probably began alongside pastoralist dairy traditions. Although written references to ghee appear only centuries later in Vedic texts, Archaeological evidence from dairying sites of the Indus Valley Civilization supports early production of butter. Ghee is made by gently heating butter to separate milk solids and water, leaving behind a shelf-stable fat rich in flavor and higher smoke point. This made it valuable not just as food but in rituals and medicine. The clarification process is slow and careful, requiring controlled heating and skimming, resulting in a golden, aromatic product with extended preservation. Ghee's cultural and nutritional importance grew quietly over millennia, rooted in pastoral practices and continuous tradition. Around 2500 BCE, in Southeast Asia and parts of China, fermented fish pastes quietly matured into culinary staples. Archaeological evidence is limited, but ethnographic studies and historical texts reveal that fish paste, or praek in Cambodia, Ipi in Myanmar, and Shaoxing fermented sauces in China, have multiple independent origins across these regions. The process involves layering fish with salt, sometimes with rice or other starches, and allowing natural microbes to break down proteins and fats over weeks or months. This yields a thick, pungent paste rich in umami amino acids, used as seasoning or condiment. The preservation method was crucial in humid tropical climates where fresh fish spoils quickly. These pastes likely evolved independently, adapting to local tastes and resources, long before written records documented them. The slow microbial symphony transforms fish into concentrated flavor, connecting communities through taste and tradition. By approximately 2400 BCE, in ancient Mesopotamia, cucumber pickles made their appearance. While direct archaeological evidence is scarce, later cuneiform texts and iconography describe the pickling of cucumbers and other vegetables in brine or vinegar. Pickling was a specific technique for preserving vegetables beyond harvest seasons in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This practice was significant enough to be recorded and passed down in scribal traditions. The pickled cucumbers were likely stored in ceramic jars, submerged in salty, sometimes acidic liquids to inhibit spoilage. Pickling changed textures, softened cell walls, and developed tangy, sour flavors through lactic acid fermentation. This allowed cucumbers to be enjoyed year-round, bridging seasons gently through the quiet alchemy of salt and thyme. Around 2300 BCE, in Neolithic China, millet porridge was a staple food, nourishing early agrarian communities. Archaeobotanical studies from sites like Chishan reveal charred millet grains in grinding stones bearing starch residues. Millet, a hardy cereal suited to the warm, dry climates of northern China, was ground into coarse flour and boiled with water to make thick porridge. This dish was simple, without spices or sweeteners, but rich in calories and easy to digest. Porridge was likely cooked over open fires or in clay pots, simmered slowly until soft. It provided a reliable source of energy and was easy to prepare in large quantities, suitable for communal meals. Millet porridge's central role in early Chinese diets reflects the gradual shift from hunting-gathering to settled farming, where food became a steady, comforting presence. By 2200 BCE, in ancient Egypt, a thick, fermented beer-like beverage called bouza emerged as a common staple. Iconographic depictions and residue analyses from pottery jars reveal that bouza was made from barley or emmer wheat, often incorporating bread crumbs or malted grains, which were allowed to ferment naturally with wild yeasts and bacteria. Unlike modern filtered beers, Buza was a thick, cloudy, porridge-like liquid, rich in nutrients and low in alcohol, drunk daily by commoners and workers alike. Its fermentation was slow and spontaneous, without added yeast. Buza provided hydration and calories, essential in a hot climate where water was not always safe. The drink was communal, nourishing, and mildly intoxicating, an ancient elixir of sustenance and social bonding. Around 2000 BCE, in Lajia, China, archaeologists uncovered a sealed bowl containing the earliest known noodles. Made from millet, these noodles were thin strands cooked and stored in a ceramic vessel, preserved under layers of volcanic ash from an eruption. The find pushed back the known origin of noodles by millennia. This discovery shows that noodle making was practiced long before wheat became dominant in the region. The millet noodles were probably boiled and served in broth or as a staple carbohydrate. The presence of this bowl illustrates early culinary sophistication and the importance of cereals beyond porridge, demonstrating how ancient peoples manipulated grains into various forms, all carefully crafted by slow hands and quiet fire. Around 2500 BCE, in Southeast Asia and parts of China, fermented fish pastes quietly matured into culinary staples. Archaeological evidence is limited, but ethnographic studies and historical texts reveal that fish paste, or praek in Cambodia, ipi in Myanmar, and shaoxing fermented sauces in China, have multiple independent origins across these regions. The process involves layering fish with salt, sometimes with rice or other starches, and allowing natural microbes to break down proteins and fats over weeks or months. This yields a thick, pungent paste rich in umami amino acids, used as seasoning or condiment. The preservation method was crucial in humid tropical climates where fresh fish spoils quickly. These pastes likely evolved independently, adapting to local tastes and resources, long before written records documented them. The slow microbial symphony transforms fish into concentrated flavor, connecting communities through taste and tradition. By approximately 2400 BCE, in ancient Mesopotamia, cucumber pickles made their appearance. While direct archaeological evidence is scarce, later cuneiform texts and iconography describe the pickling of cucumbers and other vegetables in brine or vinegar. Pickling was a specific technique for preserving vegetables beyond harvest seasons in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This practice was significant enough to be recorded and passed down in scribal traditions. The pickled cucumbers were likely stored in ceramic jars, submerged in salty, sometimes acidic liquids to inhibit spoilage. Pickling changed textures, softened cell walls, and developed tangy, sour flavors through lactic acid fermentation. This allowed cucumbers to be enjoyed year-round, bridging seasons gently through the quiet alchemy of salt and thyme. Around 2300 BCE, in Neolithic China, millet porridge was a staple food, nourishing early agrarian communities. Archaeobotanical studies from sites like Chishan reveal charred millet grains in grinding stones bearing starch residues. Millet, a hearty cereal suited to the warm, dry climates of northern China, was ground into coarse flour and boiled with water to make thick porridge. This dish was simple, without spices or sweeteners, but rich in calories and easy to digest. Porridge was likely cooked over open fires or in clay pots, simmered slowly until soft. It provided a reliable source of energy and was easy to prepare in large quantities, suitable for communal meals. Millet porridge's central role in early Chinese diets reflects the gradual shift from hunting-gathering to settled farming, where food became a steady, comforting presence. By 2200 BCE, in ancient Egypt, a thick, fermented beer-like beverage called buza emerged as a common staple. Iconographic depictions and residue analyses from pottery jars reveal that buza was made from barley or emmer wheat, often incorporating bread crumbs or malted grains, which were allowed to ferment naturally with wild yeasts and bacteria. Unlike modern filtered beers, buza was a thick, cloudy, porridge-like liquid, rich in nutrients and low in alcohol, drunk daily by commoners and workers alike. Its fermentation was slow and spontaneous, without added yeast. Buza provided hydration and calories, essential in a hot climate where water was not always safe. The drink was communal, nourishing, and mildly intoxicating, an ancient elixir of sustenance and social bonding. Around 2000 BCE, in Lajia, China, archaeologists uncovered a sealed bowl containing the earliest known noodles. Made from millet, these noodles were thin strands cooked and stored in a ceramic vessel, preserved under layers of volcanic ash from an eruption. The find pushed back the known origin of noodles by millennia. This discovery shows that noodle making was practiced long before wheat became dominant in the region. The millet noodles were probably boiled and served in broth or as a staple carbohydrate. The presence of this bowl illustrates early culinary sophistication and the importance of cereals beyond porridge, demonstrating how ancient peoples manipulated grains into various forms, all carefully crafted by slow hands and quiet fire. Around 2000 BCE, in Mesoamerica, the cacao bean found new life as a beverage rather than a mere snack. Chemical residue analyses of ancient pottery shards, especially from sites like the Olmec heartland, reveal the presence of theobromine and caffeine, biomarkers specific to cacao. This early chocolate drink was not the sweetened, creamy version we know today. Instead, it was likely foamed by pouring back and forth between vessels and spiced with chili peppers or local herbs to add complexity and bitterness. The beverage held ritual significance and was consumed mostly by elites. The foam was prized as a mark of quality, created through slow, careful pouring that aerated the liquid. This preparation is the earliest known evidence of cacao use, showing that the people of Mesoamerica harnessed the natural bitterness and stimulating properties of cacao long before European contact. In Peru, by about 1900 BC, popcorn was already popping quietly in prehistoric kitchens. Archaeologists uncovered charred, puffed maize kernels at sites such as Huaca Prieta and Paloma, pushing back the timeline for popcorn well beyond previous assumptions. These ancient kernels, unlike the small modern varieties, were larger and more irregular, but their characteristic puffed shape confirms they were intentionally heated until they popped. Popcorn's origin is closely linked to maize domestication and early agricultural practices in the Andean region. The popping is caused by the rapid heating of moisture inside the kernel, causing it to burst open and expand. While popcorn might seem trivial, it reveals the early people's familiarity with grain properties and controlled heat, subtle knowledge passed quietly from generation to generation. Around 1800 BCE, in South Asia, early chutney-like preserves emerged, combining fruits with spices and sometimes fermentation. Although direct archaeological evidence is sparse, ethnographic continuity and later textual sources from Ayurvedic and culinary traditions confirm the antiquity of fruit and spice preserves. These early chutneys would not have been sweet jams but rather complex mixtures balancing sour, salty, spicy, and sometimes fermented flavors. Preservation methods likely included sun-drying, salt curing, and fermenting, aimed at extending the life of seasonal fruits and making them usable year-round. The slow mingling of fruit sugars with spices such as mustard, tamarind, or chili, along with natural fermentation, created condiments that enriched staple meals. Chutneys reflect the South Asian palate's early embrace of layered tastes and food conservation, techniques that continue gently simmering in kitchens today. By about 1700 BCE, in Northern Europe, sourdough rye bread became a dietary mainstay, shaped by climate and crop suitability. Paleobotanical data shows rye cultivation thrived in cooler, wetter regions where wheat was less reliable. Fermentation inference comes from chemical analysis of charred bread remains, indicating the presence of lactobacilli and wild yeasts consistent with sourdough processes. Rye's high pentazan content and dense gluten network make it particularly suited for natural sourdough fermentation, which improves texture and flavor while enhancing shelf life. The fermentation was slow and controlled, requiring starter cultures nurtured over days. This bread was dense and tangy, far from modern light wheat loaves, but deeply satisfying in the challenging northern environment. It reflects how humans learned to partner with microbes to make the most of hardy grains in quiet, cool places. Around 1600 BCE, across widely separated regions including Polynesia, the Americas, and other parts of the world, earth oven barbecues developed independently as a method of slow cooking. Archaeological evidence shows earth ovens such as the Maori hongi, Hawaiian imu, and Andean huaisha, all involving pits dug into the ground, lined with heated stones, covered with leaves, and sealed with soil to trap heat and steam. Food, often meats, tubers, or root vegetables, cooked slowly for hours in this gentle, enclosed heat. The technique preserved moisture, tenderized tough ingredients, and required patience and subtle control of fire and timing. Though dates differ by region, these earth ovens illustrate convergent culinary evolution, a quiet, practical, and communal way to transform raw ingredients into nourishing feasts without rush or fanfare. Around 1500 BCE in Mesoamerica, an important food science quietly took shape: nixtamalization. This process involves soaking and cooking maize kernels in an alkaline solution, typically lime water, to loosen the hulls and soften the grains. Chemical and grinding evidence from ancient grinding stones and pottery confirms this practice. Nixtamalization dramatically improves maize's nutritional value by making niacin more bioavailable, reducing toxins, and enhancing flavor and aroma. This ancient technique also makes dough, or masa, easier to work with, allowing for the creation of tortillas and tamales. Though the process is simple, it requires precise control of time and pH. Without it, maize could cause pellagra, a deficiency disease. Thus, nixtamalization stands as a slow, deliberate intervention, an elegant partnership between humans and chemistry that shaped Mesoamerican diets for millennia. By approximately 1400 BCE in the ancient Near East, a style of flatbread emerged that resembles modern pita bread. Though the term pita is of much later origin, Iconographic depictions from Mesopotamian and Levantine archaeological sites show circular, thin breads baked on hot stones or clay ovens, sometimes puffing up due to steam, creating a pocket inside. Baking technologies included taboons or clay ovens heated with fire, allowing dough to cook quickly yet evenly. These breads were unleavened or mildly leavened, durable, and could be stored or used as edible utensils. Their texture was soft yet resilient, perfect for scooping stews or carrying food. This ancient flatbread style reflects not only practical baking but also social sharing around meals. The quiet chemistry of heat and moisture transformed simple flour and water into edible tradition. Around 1200 BCE in the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia, sesame oil pressing was practiced, becoming a valuable addition to ancient diets and economies. Textual evidence and archaeobotanical finds indicate that sesame seeds were cultivated and processed to extract oil through grinding and pressing. Sesame's high oil content makes it ideal for pressing, and ceramic vessels bearing oil residues confirm this activity. The oil was used for cooking, illumination, and possibly ritual. Pressing sesame seeds requires moderate pressure and careful grinding, often using stone mortars and presses. The extracted oil is rich in unsaturated fats and antioxidants, which help preserve it. Sesame oil's production reveals early mastery of plant-based fats and technologies that extended food variety and richness, connecting humans with the slow alchemy of seed to oil. Around 1000 BCE in the ancient Mediterranean, precursors to fermented fish sauces, early ancestors of the famous Roman garum, began to appear. Archaeological excavations reveal ceramic containers with residues indicating partial fermentation of fish mixed with salt. While classical garum, with its industrial-scale production and refined qualities, dates to later periods, earlier proto-garum preparations were simpler and localized. These sauces were made by layering fish, often small or less desirable species, with salt and allowing natural microbial fermentation to break down proteins into amino acids like glutamate, producing intense umami flavor. This process was important for preservation in hot climates and as a seasoning agent. The production required time, salt, and microbial collaboration. These early fermented fish sauces shaped culinary traditions that traveled across the Mediterranean basin, quietly enhancing meals with deep, savory complexity. By about 800 BCE in China, liquid soy sauce precursors called shi or jiang developed as a byproduct of soy fermentation. Textual sources from the Zhou dynasty describe various fermented soy products, though the exact recipes varied regionally. The liquid fraction, what we now call soy sauce, was produced by fermenting soybeans with grains, salt, and mold cultures, including Aspergillus species. This slow fermentation, sometimes lasting months, created a dark, salty, and umami-rich liquid used for seasoning and preservation. Soy sauce's origins reflect gradual culinary innovation and microbial partnership, enabling people to extract intense flavor from humble soybeans. This ancient condiment is a testament to fermentation's quiet power, turning simple legumes into culinary cornerstone liquids that balance taste and nutrition. Around 700 BCE in Mesoamerica, the tortilla emerged as a staple flatbread made from nixtamalized maize dough, or masa. Ethnohistoric sources and colonial-era records reveal that by this time, maize processed through nixtamalization was ground into dough, shaped into thin rounds, and cooked on hot griddles called comales. Tortillas were essential daily food, versatile and portable, providing a soft, chewy vehicle for other foods. The nixtamal process enhances nutritional value by releasing niacin and improving protein quality. Tortilla's origins lie in this post-nixtamal era, showing how maize transformation created a foundational element of Mesoamerican diets, slowly passed down and embraced for its sustenance and simplicity. By about 600 BCE across the Mediterranean and India, early fried dough confections, proto-donuts, appeared in culinary texts and archaeological interpretations. Frying in oil was a well-established cooking technique by this time, as evidenced by oil lamps, presses, and references in classical literature. These doughs, often leavened or unleavened, were shaped into rounds or twists and cooked in hot oil, producing crispy, golden exteriors and soft interiors. Though sweeteners like honey or fruit syrups were sometimes added later, the basic concept of fried dough predates these. This practice reflects evolving culinary experimentation, using oil's rapid heat transfer to create textures and flavors distinct from baking or boiling. These proto-donuts quietly laid groundwork for myriad fried treats that followed across continents. In India, by approximately 500 BC, paneer, an acid-set fresh cheese, was being produced, distinguished clearly from rennet coagulated cheeses. Ancient Indian texts and culinary manuscripts describe simple cheese-making processes where milk was curdled using natural acids like lemon juice or yogurt, without animal-derived rennet enzymes. This produces a mild, crumbly cheese that does not age or melt like rennet cheeses common in Europe. Paneer became integral to South Asian cuisine, valued for its texture, mild flavor, and versatility in both savory and sweet dishes. The slow coagulation and gentle pressing preserve moisture, resulting in a cheese that softly holds shape during cooking. Its distinct method and cultural embedding mark paneer as a quietly unique dairy tradition. By around 400 BCE in Japan, buckwheat was introduced and slowly integrated into food preparations, eventually leading to what we now call soba noodles. Archaeological evidence and historical records show that buckwheat cultivation spread from continental Asia, but the popularization of buckwheat noodles occurred much later, in medieval times. Early uses likely included grinding buckwheat into coarse flour for porridges or simple pancakes. Buckwheat's adaptability to poor soils and cool climates suited Japan's mountainous regions, and over centuries, culinary traditions developed around it. Though buckwheat preparations were not immediately dominant, this slow adoption marks an important step in Japanese food history, turning a humble grain into a cultural symbol of health and longevity. Between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE in the Greco-Roman world, garum, a fermented fish sauce, achieved industrial production and widespread use. Archaeological excavations of coastal factories in places like Spain and Italy reveal large-scale vats where fish parts, salt, and herbs were left to ferment under the Mediterranean sun. Literary texts describe garum as a prized seasoning, rich in umami amino acids formed through enzymatic protein breakdown. The process took weeks to months and involved careful layering and mixing. Garum was transported widely in amphorae and used to flavor everything from meats to vegetables. This industrial-scale fermentation was a sophisticated culinary technology of its time, quietly shaping Roman gastronomy with pungent complexity. Around the 2nd century BCE in China during the Han Dynasty, tofu, or dufu, began to be documented in texts and folklore. Made by coagulating soy milk using natural coagulants such as nigari, magnesium chloride, or gypsum, tofu offered a versatile, protein-rich food source. Its exact origin is debated, with legends attributing invention to various figures, but textual evidence confirms tofu's role by this period. Tofu could be pressed into firm blocks or consumed fresh and was valued for its mild flavor and ability to absorb seasonings. The slow coagulation and pressing processes produced diverse textures, enabling culinary creativity. Tofu's emergence reflects a deliberate harnessing of soybean fermentation and coagulation techniques that became foundational in East Asian diets. In Korea, by the 1st century CE, early forms of kimchi existed, though quite different from the spicy versions familiar today. Han-era Chinese texts and local Korean records describe salted and fermented vegetables, typically cabbage or radish, preserved with salt and natural fermentation. Notably, chili peppers had not yet arrived in East Asia. Their introduction occurred much later, after the 16th century, brought from the Americas. These proto-kimchis relied on lactic acid bacteria fermenting vegetables in cool conditions, producing sour and umami flavors. This slow, natural process preserved vegetables for long winters, reflecting a humble culinary adaptation rooted in preservation, rather than spice or heat. Around the 1st century CE in China, ancestors of spring rolls appeared in textual culinary references, describing thin wrappers made from wheat or rice flour dough. These wrappers were delicate sheets cooked briefly on hot surfaces, used to enclose various fillings. While the modern spring roll with fried or fresh variants developed much later, early texts indicate the preparation of thin dough sheets that could be rolled or folded around ingredients, creating portable, convenient snacks or meal components. The technique exemplifies slow culinary evolution, starting with simple dough and expanding into diverse, layered foods over centuries. Honey cakes, spiced and sweetened, were common in the Roman Empire by the 1st century CE, as recorded in ancient cookbooks such as Epicurus. These cakes used honey as the primary sweetener, often flavored with warming spices like cinnamon, pepper, or bay leaves. Unlike modern cakes with flour and sugar, Roman honey cakes varied in texture, sometimes dense and moist, sometimes crisp. The recipes detailed slow mixing, gentle baking, and careful spicing to balance flavors. Honey cakes were not only festive treats but also had medicinal associations. The meticulous preservation of recipes demonstrates a sophisticated culinary culture valuing texture, aroma, and slow development of flavor. By the 2nd century CE in China, rice noodles were widely documented in texts as a staple food. These noodles were made by soaking and grinding rice into a smooth batter, then steaming thin sheets before slicing them into ribbons. Rice noodles offered a gluten-free alternative to wheat noodles, suitable for southern Chinese climates where rice was abundant. Textual records describe their preparation, cooking, and use in soups and stir-fries. The crafting of rice noodles required patience and skill, especially in managing batter consistency and cooking times. Their presence in everyday diets marks the steady development of diverse noodle traditions that continue today. Fermented tea, akin to modern pu'er, is described in historical Chinese records from the 4th century CE, though detailed microbial aging descriptions appear later. This tea undergoes post-fermentation, where naturally occurring fungi and bacteria slowly transform the tea leaves over months or years, altering flavor and reducing bitterness. Ancient texts mention tea storage and aging practices that improved taste. The process is a delicate dance of moisture, temperature, and time, resulting in a dark, earthy infusion prized for its calming properties. This slow microbial transformation highlights a unique human appreciation for fermented complexity, extending beyond food into beverages. Around the 6th century CE, sesame brittle, known as pastelli in some traditions, became common across the Middle East and South Asia. Textual sources and culinary continuity attest to the practice of binding sesame seeds with honey or sugar syrup, then cooling the mixture into thin, brittle sheets or bars. This confection combined the nutty aroma and crunch of sesame with the sticky sweetness of honey, preserved by gentle cooking and slow cooling. Making sesame brittle required careful heating to avoid burning the honey and precise spreading to create even thickness. It served as portable energy food and festive sweet, showcasing early mastery of sugar and seed combinations. In South India, by the 7th century CE, dosa, a fermented rice and lentil crepe, was well established, as confirmed by texts and stable culinary traditions. Batter made from soaked rice and black gram lentils was fermented by natural lactic acid bacteria and wild yeasts, a slow biochemical process lasting hours or overnight. The fermented batter was poured thinly onto hot griddles, producing crepes with crisp edges and soft centers. Dosa fermentation improved digestibility, flavor, and nutritional value, reflecting deep understanding of microbial transformation. This slow culinary art endures, connecting modern kitchens to ancient fermentation wisdom. In Japan, natto, fermented soybeans, appears in Heian period references around the 8th century CE, though origin stories vary widely. Natto production involves inoculating cooked soybeans with Bacillus subtilis bacteria, initiating a sticky, stringy, and pungent fermentation over a day or two. This microbial process produces unique textures and strong aromas, valued for nutrition and digestion. While written records emerge later, oral tradition and archaeological clues suggest natto's fermentation knowledge is much older. The careful control of fermentation temperature and hygiene exemplifies human patience in harnessing microbes for food transformation. Also in 8th century Japan, nare sushi, the ancestor of modern sushi, involved fermenting fish with rice as a preservation method. Textual records describe packing fish with salted rice, allowing lactic acid fermentation to develop slowly over weeks or months. This process preserved fish before refrigeration, producing sour, savory flavors distinct from fresh sushi today. The rice was typically discarded after fermentation, and the fish consumed. This slow fermentation technique reflects ancient methods of food conservation, where patience and microbial cooperation replaced haste, yielding complex flavors born from time and quiet chemical change. By the 9th century CE in Japan, tsukemono, the art of Japanese pickling, was already practiced, though many of the diverse styles were formalized only in later centuries. Textual evidence from this period describes simple preservation methods using salt, rice bran, nuka, and vinegar to ferment or pickle vegetables like daikon radish, cucumbers, and eggplants. These pickles served as accompaniments to rice, adding subtle acidity and texture to meals. The pickling process varies from quick salt curing to longer fermentation, allowing gentle lactic acid bacteria to develop mild tanginess. This slow preservation method exemplifies a respectful human partnership with microbes and seasonal harvests, quietly extending food's shelf life and flavor profiles. In Georgia, by the 10th century CE, khachapuri, a cheese-filled bread, was developing as a regional culinary tradition, though clear historical documentation appears later. Oral traditions and continuous culinary practice reveal that this dish combines leavened dough with local cheeses, often baked in clay ovens. Khachapuri varies by region in shape and cheese type, reflecting deep-rooted dairy and baking skills. The dough's leavening suggests mastery of natural yeast fermentation, while the melted cheese filling illustrates pastoral diets rich in sheep and cow milk. This comforting bread-cheese combination reveals how slow, patient baking and local ingredients intertwine to create enduring food heritage. Marzipan, a sweet almond and sugar paste, traces its origins to Persia by the 11th century CE, later spreading to Europe through trade and cultural exchange during the medieval period. Medieval texts describe marzipan as a smooth, pliable confection crafted from finely ground almonds blended with honey or sugar syrup. It was often shaped into fruits or decorative forms, served at feasts or medicinally to soothe digestion. The confection's preparation requires slow, careful grinding of almonds to avoid bitterness, and precise sugar syrup cooking to achieve the right texture. Marzipan's migration from Persia to Europe marks a quiet, refined sweet tradition crossing cultures along ancient trade routes. In 12th century Sicily, under Arab and later Norman rule, dried pasta made from durum wheat began to be produced on a larger scale, with textual evidence referencing etria, a term for extruded or spun pasta shapes. These early industrial-ish techniques involved drying pasta for storage and transport, a significant innovation allowing longer shelf life compared to fresh noodles. Durum wheat's hard texture makes it especially suitable for drying. Texts describe the production and trade of pasta, signaling a slowly evolving food industry. This early pasta reflects the blending of Mediterranean agricultural knowledge with culinary innovation, quietly transforming staple grains into versatile, portable foods that supported growing populations. By the 12th century CE in Korea, fermented soybean pastes, chung or jang, were codified in texts, building on long-standing culinary traditions. These pastes include doenjang, fermented soybean paste, and ganjang, soy sauce, produced by fermenting cooked soybeans with salt, mold, and sometimes grains, over months. The fermentation transforms proteins into rich umami flavors and preserves the soybeans. Texts detail preparation methods, seasonal timing, and storage, highlighting the importance of microbial stewardship and slow maturation. These fermented pastes serve as foundational flavor bases in Korean cuisine, quietly embodying centuries of patient fermentation and culinary wisdom. By the 13th century CE in the Maghreb region of North Africa, couscous had become a well-established staple, as evidenced by medieval Arabic texts. Couscous is made from semolina, the coarse particles of durum wheat, which are rolled into tiny granules and then steamed repeatedly in a special pot called a couscousier. This slow steaming method allows the grains to become light and fluffy without dissolving into mush. Couscous served as a versatile base for stews, vegetables, and meats, providing a slow, comforting texture. Its preparation is a deliberate, rhythmic process, often a communal culinary ritual passed through generations. In Northern Europe, by the 13th century CE, gingerbread was a prized sweet delicacy documented in medieval guild records and cookbooks. Early recipes relied on honey as the primary sweetener, with spices such as ginger, cinnamon, and cloves lending warmth and subtle pungency. Sugar became more common in later centuries as trade routes expanded. Gingerbread required careful mixing and slow baking to meld flavors and achieve a moist yet firm texture. The dough's aromatic spices evoke slow, cozy kitchens where the sweet scent lingered like a gentle embrace, marking celebrations or everyday treats. During the 14th century CE in Japan, soba noodles, made from buckwheat flour, became widely consumed as recorded in historical menu listings and local documents. Buckwheat's adaptability to Japan's mountainous regions allowed it to flourish, complementing rice cultivation. By the Edo period, 17th–19th centuries, soba was a staple enjoyed daily, but its origins in the 14th century show gradual adoption and integration. Preparing soba requires grinding buckwheat finely and mixing with wheat flour to provide elasticity, then rolling and cutting thin noodles. This slow craft yielded nourishing, earthy-flavored noodles appreciated for their texture and digestibility. By the 15th century CE in Japan, mochi, ritual rice cakes made from glutinous rice, had become formalized in religious and cultural practices, although its origins extend further back. Mochi production involves soaking sticky rice, steaming it, and then pounding it vigorously into a smooth, elastic paste before shaping into cakes or decorative forms. This labor-intensive process was often communal and imbued with spiritual significance during festivals and ceremonies. The ritual aspect, combined with the slow transformation of rice from grain to dough, underscores the deep cultural connections between food, tradition, and time in Japan's history. In Peru, the practice of curing raw fish with acids predates the 15th century but evolved significantly after the Columbian exchange introduced citrus fruits in the same century. Pre-Columbian populations used acids from local fruits like tumbo or fermented maize beer to marinate fish, but the arrival of lemons and limes introduced a sharper, more effective curing agent, giving birth to modern ceviche. The citrus's ascorbic acid quickly denatures fish proteins, cooking the fish without heat. This slow chemical interaction between fruit acids and seafood showcases a delicate balance between nature's gifts and human ingenuity in food preservation. By the 16th century CE in Italy, tomato sauce began to appear in early European recipes following the Columbian exchange. Tomatoes, native to the Americas, were initially met with suspicion but gradually integrated into Mediterranean cuisines. The first tomato sauces were simple, often combined with herbs, garlic, and olive oil, cooked slowly to soften the fruit and concentrate flavors. The adaptation of tomatoes to European tastes took centuries, with sauce preparations evolving from rustic to refined. This slow culinary acceptance transformed Italian cooking profoundly, introducing vibrant acidity and sweetness that balance richer ingredients, all emerging gently from historical exchanges. After the 16th century CE, chili peppers, native to the Americas, began a remarkable diffusion into Asia through the Columbian exchange, especially in India and Southeast Asia. Their adoption was surprisingly rapid, transforming local cuisines with new pungency and heat. The fiery fruit quickly integrated into countless dishes, from curries to stir-fries, altering flavor profiles and culinary practices. Chilies brought a vibrant, spicy dimension that complemented traditional spices already in use. This culinary revolution unfolded gradually but noticeably, illustrating how global exchanges introduced bold new sensations that simmered gently into centuries-old food cultures. Tempura, a light frying technique, entered Japan in the 16th century CE via Portuguese traders during the Nanban trade period. Historical accounts describe the frying of seafood and vegetables in a thin batter made of cold water and wheat flour, resulting in a delicate, crispy coating. Although initially a foreign import, tempura was embraced and popularized during the Edo period, evolving into a distinct Japanese specialty. The technique relies on careful temperature control and swift frying to preserve the natural texture of ingredients. This slow culinary adoption highlights how foreign methods can be tenderly folded into local traditions over time. In Europe during the 16th century CE, the expansion of sugarcane plantations in the Americas and the resulting increase in refined cane sugar availability reshaped dessert making dramatically. Previously, sweeteners like honey or fruit syrups dominated, but cheaper and more abundant cane sugar allowed bakers and confectioners to experiment with sweeter, more intricate desserts. Recipes evolved to include sugar syrups, candies, and marzipan. The slow refinement of sugar processing techniques contributed to sugar's sweetness and purity, enabling these new textures and flavors. This gradual shift marks a profound, quietly transformative period in European culinary history centered on sweetness. By the 17th century CE, biryani, a layered rice and meat dish with aromatic spices, had crystallized in the culinary traditions of India and Persia, as reflected in courtly and medieval texts. This dish involves cooking fragrant basmati rice with marinated meat, often lamb or chicken, layered and slow-cooked with saffron, cardamom, and cloves. The slow steaming process melds flavors delicately while keeping rice grains separate and tender. Biryani's evolution demonstrates the complex cultural exchanges along trade routes and within royal kitchens, where patience and precise spice balancing created an enduring signature dish, beloved across South Asia and beyond. Curry powder, as known in Britain, emerged in the 17th century CE as an Anglo-Indian export blend synthesizing various Indian spices into a standardized mix for European palates. Commercial records document its manufacture and sale, providing a simplified seasoning intended to approximate the complex flavors of Indian cooking. This commercialization reflects early global food trade and adaptation, with curry powder combining turmeric, coriander, cumin, fenugreek, and other spices. While distinct from traditional Indian masalas, this powder became a staple seasoning in British households, illustrating how slow culinary globalization transforms and standardizes exotic flavors for new contexts. In the 17th century CE, mustard as we recognize it today, prepared by grinding mustard seeds and mixing them with vinegar or wine, became standardized in France and England. Earlier uses of mustard involved simply grinding seeds dry, but this modern style added acidity, which stabilized flavor and texture. Textual records and trademarks from this period reflect the rise of commercial mustard production, transforming it from a crude condiment into a refined sauce. The slow grinding process and the vinegar's gentle bite created a balance that could enhance meats in dishes without overpowering, demonstrating the patient culinary craft behind this humble yet enduring sauce. Around the same century in the Ottoman Empire and spreading into Europe, coffeehouses emerged as social hubs where sweetened and spiced coffee drinks transformed social dining and conversation. Historical accounts describe drinks flavored with sugar, cardamom, cinnamon, and sometimes rosewater, served hot in delicate cups. Coffee's slow brewing and the intricate layering of spices made it a beverage for leisurely enjoyment and communal gathering. These early coffeehouse cultures laid groundwork for European café traditions, where the slow sipping of spiced coffee accompanied reading, discourse, and quiet social rituals, all evolving gradually across borders. In 17th-century Japan, the ancestors of mochi ice cream are better understood as kuzu mochi and other rice-based sweets combined with ice or cold desserts introduced later. While traditional mochi, pounded glutinous rice cakes, has a long history, the pairing of mochi with ice cream is a 20th-century innovation. Earlier forms involved chilled or gelatinous sweets made from kudzu starch, kuzu mochi, offering soft textures and mild sweetness. This gradual culinary evolution blends ancient rice cake techniques with modern refrigeration and dairy, illustrating how traditional foods can gently adapt and transform over centuries into new, beloved treats. Kimchi underwent a significant transformation in Korea during the 17th century CE with the introduction of chili peppers from the Americas following the Columbian Exchange. The inclusion of chili dramatically changed kimchi's flavor, fermentation dynamics, and preservation qualities. Prior to chili, kimchi relied on salt and fermentation alone, producing milder, tangy flavors. The spicy red pepper added capsaicin, influencing microbial communities and accelerating fermentation. This fiery addition enhanced kimchi's complexity and preservation duration, solidifying its role as a staple condiment and cultural symbol. The slow integration of chili peppers into Korean cuisine exemplifies gradual culinary adaptation through global contact. Mayonnaise gained popularity in France and Spain during the 18th century CE, with culinary texts from the 1750s describing emulsified sauces combining egg yolks, oil, and acid like vinegar or lemon juice. One debated origin story places its invention in Mahon, Minorca, after a 1756 siege, though historical evidence for this tale is inconclusive. The slow, careful emulsification process, whisking oil into yolks to form a stable, creamy sauce, demonstrates an intricate culinary technique requiring patience and precision. Mayonnaise soon became a versatile condiment, spreading quietly through European kitchens and later global cuisines, valued for its rich texture and subtle tang. In 18th century Japan, tempura became codified into the style now recognized from the Edo period, with culinary literature documenting the refined technique of battering and frying seafood and vegetables. The batter, made simply from cold water and wheat flour, creates a light, crisp coating when fried quickly at controlled temperatures. This cooking method balances texture and flavor delicately, preserving the natural qualities of the ingredients beneath a thin crust. The Edo codification reflects a mature culinary art that slowly evolved from earlier Portuguese influences, eventually becoming a beloved and distinctive pillar of Japanese cuisine. Potato soup gained widespread prominence in 18th century Europe after the Columbian Exchange introduced the potato from the Americas. Initially met with suspicion, the potato gradually became a vital staple, especially among poorer populations, due to its high yield and nutritional value. Potato soup emerged as a hearty, warming dish that could stretch limited food supplies, especially during times of famine or hardship. The slow simmering of potatoes with herbs and occasionally other vegetables created a soothing, filling meal that quietly anchored many European diets in this period of agricultural transition and social upheaval. In 18th-century North America, precursors to modern baking powder appeared in the form of pearl ash, an impure potassium carbonate derived from wood ashes. Recipes from this era describe its use as a leavening agent, reacting with acids like cream of tartar or molasses to produce carbon dioxide gas, causing doughs to rise. Though these early chemical leaveners were less reliable and slower acting than today's double-acting baking powders, they represented important advances in baking science. This gradual development paved the way for more consistent, fluffy breads and cakes, offering bakers a slow but steady path toward culinary innovation. Joseph Priestley, an English chemist, published a scientific paper in 1767 describing artificially carbonated water, produced by infusing water with carbon dioxide gas. This discovery laid the foundation for the soda water industry, slowly evolving from laboratory curiosity to popular beverage. Carbonation adds tiny bubbles that create a tingling sensation and slight acidity, enhancing refreshment. Priestley's work, blending careful experimentation with detailed observation, marks an early step in the marriage of science and food technology, gently introducing effervescence to drinking water and, eventually, to soda and other carbonated drinks enjoyed worldwide. By the 1770s, European naval forces had adopted sauerkraut as a medicalized food to prevent scurvy during long sea voyages. Naval records document its provisioning aboard ships, recognizing that the fermented cabbage's vitamin C content helped combat the debilitating effects of scurvy. Sauerkraut's lactic acid fermentation preserved cabbage for months, allowing sailors to consume it far from fresh produce sources. This slow, natural preservation process created a tangy, nutritious supplement that quietly contributed to maritime health. Its adoption illustrates an early understanding of nutrition linked to food preservation, supporting endurance during slow, uncertain journeys across oceans. In 1795, Nicolas Appert, a French confectioner and brewer, developed a method of preserving food by sealing it in airtight containers and then applying heat, what we now call canning. His technique involved placing food in glass jars, sealing them with cork and sealing wax, and boiling them to kill spoilage microbes. This method allowed food to be stored safely for months or even years, a profound advance for industrial preservation. Appert's work won a prize from the French government, recognizing its potential to supply armies and navies with stable provisions, gently revolutionizing food storage and transport. By the early 19th century, pressed tofu, characterized by its firm texture, was documented in Chinese and Japanese texts, reflecting a standardization of tofu varieties. The process involved coagulating soy milk and then pressing the curds to remove excess liquid, resulting in blocks with a denser, chewier texture compared to softer silken tofu. These firmer styles became integral to East Asian cuisines, offering versatile protein sources that absorbed flavors and held their shape in cooking. The slow refinement of pressing techniques exemplifies a careful culinary craft, balancing texture and moisture through patient, steady methods. Around 1824 in the United States, peanut candy and peanut brittle were documented in early cookbooks as sweet confections combining roasted peanuts with caramelized sugar or molasses. These crunchy treats showcased the peanut's growing popularity following its introduction to American agriculture. While peanut butter, as a smooth spread, emerged later in the 1890s, these brittle candies represent an early, tactile use of peanuts in desserts. The preparation required slow caramelization and careful temperature control to achieve the desired brittle texture, highlighting how peanuts transitioned from a legume to a beloved confection ingredient through gentle culinary innovation. In the 1830s, modern curry powder began to be sold commercially in the United Kingdom, with advertisements promoting standardized spice blends that aimed to replicate the complex flavors of Indian cooking for British consumers. These blends typically combined turmeric, coriander, cumin, fenugreek, and other spices, simplified into a single seasoning powder for ease of use. The commercialization of curry powder reflects early global culinary exchange and adaptation, catering to British tastes and kitchens. This gradual process made curry an accessible and popular flavor profile far beyond its Indian origins, slowly embedding itself into British food culture. Worcestershire sauce, commercially launched by Lee and Perrins in England in 1837, is a fermented condiment with a complex, tangy flavor profile combining vinegar, molasses, anchovies, tamarind, and spices. Its creation reportedly stemmed from a recipe brought from India and refined over time through fermentation and aging in barrels. The sauce's fermentation contributes to its depth and umami, while slow maturation softens harsh flavors into a balanced, versatile seasoning. Worcestershire sauce soon became a staple in British and international kitchens, illustrating the gradual integration of colonial influences into everyday culinary practices through patient flavor development. The modern baking powder revolution began with early patents in the UK and USA in the 1830s and 1840s, with Horsford's preparation later patented and Bird's custard powder appearing in 1837. Baking powder combines a base, often sodium bicarbonate, with acid salts, releasing carbon dioxide gas when moistened and heated. This chemical leavening agent allowed bakers to produce lighter, fluffier breads and cakes without relying on yeast. The invention and refinement of baking powder represent a significant technological advance in baking, enabling quicker, more reliable rising through controlled chemical reactions, a slow but steady transformation in home and commercial kitchens. In 1856, Gale Borden Jr., an American inventor, secured a patent for condensed milk, a shelf-stable dairy product created by removing much of the water from cow's milk and adding sugar to preserve it. This process allowed milk to be stored safely without refrigeration, which was revolutionary for households and military use alike. The thick, sweetened milk could be reconstituted by adding water, offering a reliable source of dairy nutrients during travel or scarcity. Condensed milk's invention marked a significant step in food preservation technology, carefully blending chemistry and practicality to extend milk's usability in a gentle, enduring way. Tabasco sauce, originating in Louisiana in 1868, was created by Edmund McIlhenny, who formulated a spicy condiment made from aged red chili peppers, vinegar, and salt. The peppers undergo fermentation in oak barrels for up to 3 years, a slow microbial process that mellows harsh flavors and deepens complexity. The resulting sauce is vibrant, tangy, and piquant, packaged in slender bottles that became iconic worldwide. Tabasco's blend of chili heat and vinegary sharpness quietly transformed American cuisine, illustrating how fermentation and aging patiently combine to produce distinctive, lasting flavors. Vegetable shortening, introduced in the United States in 1876, represents an early phase in the industrial evolution of solid fats. Though hydrogenation, the process that hardens liquid vegetable oils into solid fats, was developed later in the early 1900s, vegetable shortening initially came from refined, partially hydrogenated fats. These early shortenings provided bakers with a plant-based alternative to animal fats like lard or butter, prized for their ability to create flaky pastries and tender baked goods. The invention marked a slow but steady shift in food manufacturing, offering consistent texture and shelf stability through careful chemical refinement. Tomato ketchup, standardized by Heinz in the United States starting in the late 19th century, transformed from regional homemade sauces into a ubiquitous commercial condiment. Heinz's meticulous approach to recipe consistency, quality control, and bottling innovations made ketchup a pantry staple across America and eventually worldwide. The sweet, tangy sauce balances tomato acidity with sugar, vinegar, and spices, and its slow refinement of ingredients and manufacturing methods ensured shelf stability and flavor uniformity. Heinz ketchup quietly became a symbol of mass-produced condiments, anchoring many meals with its gently familiar taste. Coca-Cola, launched in 1886 in Atlanta, Georgia, began as a medicinal tonic created by pharmacist John Stith Pemberton. The original formula combined coca leaf extract and cola nut caffeine with sweeteners and carbonated water. Though its early marketing emphasized health benefits, Coca-Cola soon evolved into a refreshing soft drink with a secret blend of flavorings known as Merchandise 7X. This beverage inaugurated the cola era, spreading globally and becoming a cultural icon. The slow rise of Coca-Cola illustrates how beverage innovation, branding, and carbonation technology gently coalesced into a worldwide phenomenon. Instant coffee, with patented precursors appearing in New Zealand and Japan in the late 19th century, laid the groundwork for the mass-market convenience coffee that became mainstream with Nescafé in 1938. Early inventors like David Strang and Satoru Kato developed techniques for drying brewed coffee into powder or granules, allowing rapid rehydration with hot water. These pioneering processes focused on retaining flavor and aroma despite dehydration. Instant coffee's evolution reflects a gradual industrial and culinary effort to balance convenience with taste, quietly revolutionizing daily coffee consumption by offering a quick, portable alternative to traditional brewing. In 1893, Pepsi began life as Brad's Drink, created by pharmacist Caleb Bradham in New Bern, North Carolina. This carbonated beverage was crafted from a blend of sugar, vanilla, rare oils, and cola nuts, aiming to be a refreshing and healthful tonic. It was renamed Pepsi Cola in 1898, a name inspired by the digestive enzyme pepsin in cola nuts, although pepsin was never an ingredient. The soda slowly grew in popularity, competing alongside Coca-Cola in the burgeoning soft drink market. Pepsi's history gently traces early American soda innovation, blending flavor chemistry and marketing ingenuity in patient evolution. Corn Flakes were invented in the United States by John Harvey Kellogg and his brother Will Keith Kellogg in the 1890s as part of their health regimen at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Factory records document the creation of these toasted, flaked grains, designed to be a bland, digestible breakfast cereal. The product was officially launched commercially in 1906, marketed as a wholesome alternative to heavy breakfasts. Corn Flakes represent a quiet revolution in food processing and consumption patterns, slowly introducing ready-to-eat convenience foods to American tables with a focus on simplicity and nutrition. The gelatin dessert known today as Jell-O was trademarked and launched as a brand in the United States in 1897. Early industrial gelatin sweets like Jell-O transformed powdered animal collagen, which forms a gel when dissolved and cooled, into a colorful, wobbly dessert. This product capitalized on industrial food processing advances that made gelatin easy to prepare and accessible. Jell-O's sweet, often fruit-flavored gels became a popular, playful treat for families, particularly children. The slow adoption of gelatin desserts illustrates the marriage of chemistry and marketing, creating a uniquely textured food that softly delighted palates. In 1901, the tea bag was patented in the United States, credited to inventor Roberta C. Sullivan, although earlier experiments with tea in pouches occurred in the late 19th century. Commercial marketing of tea bags gained momentum around 1908. These small porous sachets allow for quick, convenient brewing by containing loose tea leaves in a filter paper pouch, revolutionizing tea preparation. The tea bag's invention reflects a gentle progression toward convenience and uniformity in tea drinking, balancing tradition with industrial production, and quietly reshaping daily rituals with its slow infusion of flavor and aroma. Marmite, a yeast extract spread, was launched as a brand in the United Kingdom in 1902. Made from concentrated brewer's yeast, a byproduct of beer brewing, Marmite is thick, dark, and rich in umami flavor, though its strong taste polarizes palates. Its high vitamin B content led to early marketing as a healthful food supplement. Marmite's production relies on fermenting yeast cells and extracting their contents into a savory paste, a slow process requiring patience and care. Over time, it became a distinctive British culinary staple, quietly spreading to other parts of the world through colonial and cultural exchange. The ice cream cone, popularized in the United States and Europe around 1904, emerged from various inventors and fairground vendors experimenting with edible holders for frozen treats. Accounts from fairs such as the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904 describe vendors rolling waffles or thin pastries into cones to hold scoops of ice cream. Several patents claim versions of the cone, though no single inventor is definitively credited. The ice cream cone revolutionized dessert consumption by combining texture and portability, creating a slow but enduring transformation in how frozen sweets were enjoyed, gently melding crispness with creamy coldness. In 1907, milk chocolate reached a new level of perfection through commercial standardization efforts in Switzerland. While the process of conking, slowly grinding and aerating chocolate to improve texture, was developed by Rudolf Lindt in 1879, it was companies like Nestlé and Lindt in the early 20th century that refined milk chocolate recipes and production methods. By carefully balancing cocoa solids, milk powder, sugar, and fats, they produced a smoother, creamier chocolate that became globally popular. This meticulous work transformed chocolate from a bitter treat into a velvety indulgence enjoyed slowly and softly worldwide. Monosodium glutamate, or MSG, was scientifically isolated in Japan in 1908 by chemist Kikanaya Ikeda, founder of Ajinomoto. Ikeda discovered that glutamic acid was responsible for the savory, brothy taste he called umami, identifying it as the fifth basic taste after sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. MSG became the crystallized form that could be added to food to enhance flavor, providing a gentle boost to soups, broths, and various dishes. This scientific breakthrough translated a subtle sensory experience into a tangible, crystalline seasoning, quietly revolutionizing flavor enhancement in kitchens across the globe. The bouillon cube, commercially launched by the Swiss company Maggi in 1908, is a compact, portable stock concentrate that dissolves quickly to flavor soups, stews, and sauces. Made by dehydrating meat extracts, vegetables, and seasoning, these small cubes were developed to provide an easy, shelf-stable way to add savory depth to cooking without the time-consuming process of preparing fresh stock. The bouillon cube's invention marks a slow but significant step in food convenience, marrying industrial food science with traditional culinary foundations to offer quick flavor solutions. In 1912, the Oreo cookie was introduced by the National Biscuit Company, now Nabisco, in the United States as an industrially produced sandwich biscuit consisting of 2 chocolate wafers with a sweet, creamy filling. This cookie's consistent shape, taste, and texture were achieved through early 20th century advances in baking technology and mass production. Oreos soon became an iconic snack, with a subtle balance of sweetness and cocoa bitterness, enjoyed slowly with milk or on their own. Its creation highlights the era's growing ability to produce standardized, shelf-stable sweet treats for the expanding consumer market. Stainless steel, patented for food-grade cookware in the United Kingdom around 1916, introduced a corrosion-resistant alloy primarily composed of iron, chromium, and sometimes nickel. This innovation transformed kitchenware by providing durable, hygienic, and non-reactive surfaces ideal for cooking and food storage. Stainless steel resists rust and staining, requiring less maintenance than earlier metals, while allowing for easy cleaning and long-term use. The slow adoption of stainless steel in kitchens revolutionized cookware quality and safety, quietly enhancing culinary practice through material science. Vegemite, launched in Australia in 1923, is a dark, thick yeast extract spread closely related to Britain's Marmite. Made from leftover brewer's yeast, Vegemite is rich in B vitamins and offers a salty, umami-packed flavor that polarizes palates. Its production involves extracting and concentrating yeast cells, resulting in a savory paste traditionally spread thinly on bread. Vegemite's slow rise to cultural icon status in Australia demonstrates the enduring appeal of fermented, nutrient-rich condiments born from brewing byproducts and careful, patient processing. Frozen foods, popularized by Clarence Birdseye's commercial rollout in the United States in 1929, introduced flash freezing technology that rapidly lowered food temperature to preserve texture, flavor, and nutritional value better than traditional freezing. Birdseye's innovation transformed food supply chains, allowing produce, meat, and prepared meals to be stored and transported over long distances without spoilage. The slow diffusion of frozen food technology changed diets and shopping habits worldwide, offering convenient, longer-lasting food options while maintaining quality through precise control of freezing rates. In the 1930s, the origins of Thai Sriracha sauce began as a local family recipe in the coastal town of Sriracha, Thailand. This spicy chili sauce combined fresh red chilies, vinegar, garlic, sugar, and salt in a slow fermentation process, producing a thick, tangy condiment. While the Hui Fong brand's now famous American version emerged much later, in 1980, the traditional Sriracha had been enjoyed quietly for decades in Thailand. Its creation reflects a slow melding of indigenous ingredients and techniques, yielding a spicy, savory paste that balances heat and sweetness with patience and time. Spam, the canned meat product, was launched in 1937 by Hormel Foods in the United States. Developed as a shelf-stable, pre-cooked pork and ham product, Spam became iconic especially during World War II when it served as a reliable source of protein for soldiers and civilians alike. Its long shelf life, easy transportability, and simple preparation made it a wartime staple. The careful canning process, sealing cooked meat under vacuum, preserved flavor and safety without refrigeration, representing a quiet revolution in preserved meats that softened the hardships of war through sustenance. In 1938, Nescafé instant coffee was introduced in Switzerland by Nestlé after years of research into dehydrated coffee powders. This instant coffee allowed consumers to prepare a cup by simply adding hot water, rather than brewing with traditional methods. Its commercial launch marked a turning point in coffee consumption, making the beverage more accessible and convenient globally. Nescafé's mass mainstreaming reshaped daily rituals with its soluble granules, which dissolve quickly, releasing familiar aromas and flavors. This technological advance combined food science and consumer needs in a slow, steady infusion of caffeine convenience. Fanta originated in Germany in 1940 as a wartime formulation under the constraints of Allied trade embargoes that prevented Coca-Cola syrup imports. Created by the German Coca-Cola bottling company, Fanta was made from available ingredients like whey and apple pomace, producing a sweet, fruity soda distinct from classic cola. This inventive substitution allowed production to continue despite shortages. The resulting beverage's flavor reflected resourcefulness and adaptation, softly bubbling with the quiet resilience of innovation in difficult times, brewed and bottled with careful care to preserve effervescence and sweetness. M&M's, the hard-shell chocolate candies, were launched in the United States in 1941. The candy's heat-stable coating technology, developed by Forrest Mars Sr., allowed chocolate centers to be encased in a thin sugar shell, preventing melting during transport and consumption. This innovation was originally designed to supply U.S. soldiers with portable chocolate rations during World War II. The small, colorful candies offered a slow-release sweetness and texture contrast, their production showcasing advances in confectionery engineering. M&M's quietly transformed snack culture by balancing shelf stability and enjoyable texture in a tiny, sweet package. Penang curry, codified in print around 1943 in Thailand, has roots in earlier oral culinary traditions dating back many decades. This rich, spicy curry incorporates roasted dried chili paste, coconut milk, lemongrass, and kaffir lime leaves, delivering a deep and complex flavor profile. Printed recipes help standardize this regional dish, allowing its flavors to be shared more widely. The curry's slow evolution reflects the layering of local ingredients and careful preparation techniques that simmer slowly, releasing aromatic oils and balancing heat with creaminess in a gentle culinary symphony. The microwave oven, invented in 1945 by Raytheon engineer Percy Spencer, introduced a new way to cook by using microwave radiation to agitate water molecules within food, generating heat rapidly and internally. Though initially bulky and expensive, this technology paved the way for quick meal preparation decades later. The microwave oven's invention quietly transformed kitchens, changing food textures and preparation rhythms with its unseen waves. This method allowed food to warm or cook without direct heat, accelerating cooking times and creating a new category of convenience foods that softened mealtime routines with its silent hum. Pressure frying, an appliance innovation developed in the United States around 1948, was a critical step toward popularizing fried chicken on a large scale. This technique combines high-pressure cooking with hot oil frying, speeding cooking time while retaining moisture and crispiness. While Colonel Harland Sanders popularized pressure-fried chicken nationally in the 1950s with Kentucky Fried Chicken, the technology had been in use earlier. Pressure frying's careful balance of heat, pressure, and oil chemistry transformed poultry preparation, gently locking in juices beneath a crunchy crust, providing a tender yet crispy bite with methodical precision. In 1951, Sweden saw the commercialization of the Tetra Pak aseptic carton, a revolutionary packaging system designed for liquid foods such as milk and juices. This carton, made from layers of paperboard, plastic, and aluminum foil, provided an airtight, sterile environment preserving contents without refrigeration for extended periods. Though ultra-high temperature, UHT, processing was developed slightly later, Tetra Pak's invention quietly transformed food storage and distribution worldwide. Its gentle design uses minimal materials for maximum preservation, allowing liquid nourishment to flow softly and safely from carton to cup, revolutionizing convenience and freshness. The 1953 brand launch of the TV dinner by Swanson in the United States marked a turning point in frozen meal marketing. These prepackaged, compartmentalized trays offered consumers a full meal that could be quickly heated, often in a conventional or microwave oven. The rise of the TV dinner reflected a post-war cultural shift toward convenience, with frozen meals becoming a staple in many households. The packaging and portioning methods carefully preserved flavors and textures, inviting consumers to a slow, easy dining experience that accompanied the quiet glow of television evenings. In 1954, Italy contributed to global food culture by standardizing tetraploid wheat pasta varieties through agricultural breeding documentation. Tetraploid wheat, with 4 sets of chromosomes, produced stronger, higher protein flours well suited for pasta production. This standardization supported the industrialization of pasta making by providing consistent dough qualities and cooking properties. The result was a gradual but steady shift to large-scale, mechanized pasta production capable of satisfying rising demand. This botanical and agricultural refinement underpins the familiar textures and bite of pasta enjoyed worldwide, a slow evolution rooted in plant genetics and culinary tradition. Maruchan, founded in Japan in 1957, laid the groundwork for the later popularization of instant noodles. The company's corporate history charts the development of convenient, shelf-stable noodle products that could be rapidly prepared by adding hot water. Maruchan's noodles entered the United States market during the 1970s, joining the growing wave of instant noodle consumption that transformed quick meals globally. Their packaging and dehydration technology allowed long shelf life and easy transport, offering a quietly revolutionary convenience for busy consumers craving warm, flavorful sustenance with minimal effort. In 1958, Momofuku Ando's commercial launch of chicken ramen in Japan marked the birth of instant noodles as a definitive food category. Using flash frying technology, Ando created dried noodle blocks that rehydrate rapidly in hot water, maintaining a springy texture and fresh taste. This innovation met a need for affordable, accessible food in the post-war era, rapidly spreading worldwide. The chicken ramen product embodied a quiet mastery of food science and engineering, turning humble wheat flour and seasoning into a comforting, fast meal that softly warms and satisfies with each slurpy bite. In 1961, the United States witnessed a commercial innovation that brought yogurt with fruit on the bottom to supermarket shelves. This convenience dairy format combined plain yogurt with a layer of sweetened fruit preserves or puree at the base of the container. This packaging design allowed consumers to mix or enjoy the fruit separately, offering a softly customizable eating experience. The innovation marked a step toward convenience and flavor variety in dairy products, blending live cultures and fresh fruit in a gentle embrace that encouraged a slow exploration of taste and texture. The year 1962 introduced canned tuna with mayonnaise and branded tuna salad kits in the United States. These prepackaged combos combined protein-rich tuna with creamy mayonnaise, often accompanied by crackers or relish, to create a convenient, ready-to-eat meal solution. The product catered to emerging consumer desires for quick and portable meal options, especially amid changing lifestyles and growing suburban markets. The sealed cans preserved freshness and texture, while the balanced fat and protein content provided sustained satiety, quietly advancing convenience without sacrificing nourishment or taste harmony. Easy Cheese, patented and launched in 1963 in the United States, represents a notable evolution in processed cheese products. Packaged in an aerosol can, this spreadable cheese combined emulsifiers, milk solids, and flavorings, allowing consumers to dispense soft cheese with ease and minimal cleanup. This innovation reflected advancements in food science, packaging, and convenience, extending the shelf life and portability of cheese beyond traditional blocks. Easy Cheese's playful and functional design softly transformed cheese consumption into a novel tactile experience, perfect for sandwiches, snacks, and simple garnishing with a gentle, creamy texture. In 1964, Doritos emerged in the United States as one of the first seasoned tortilla chip brands to reach the mass market. Originally created by the Frito-Lay company, these chips utilized corn tortillas sliced and fried until crisp, then dusted with various seasonings to add flavor complexity. Doritos tapped into the growing snack food culture, combining traditional corn base with bold, savory coatings that appealed to a broad audience. Their packaging innovation helped maintain crispness and freshness, inviting a leisurely snack experience filled with crunchy texture and satisfying saltiness, a quiet celebration of maize transformed by simple seasoning artistry. In 1967, high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, began its industrial adoption in the United States as a sweetener derived from corn starch through enzymatic processing. This syrup, rich in fructose and glucose, offered a cost-effective alternative to traditional cane and beet sugar, especially attractive to soda manufacturers. HFCS's sweetening power and liquid form allowed for easier blending in beverages, subtly changing the formulation of soft drinks and many processed foods over subsequent decades. Its rise quietly influenced consumer palates and food industry economics, becoming a pervasive yet unassuming ingredient in countless products. Pringles, introduced in 1968 in the United States, represent a patented form of reconstituted potato crisps, made by shaping a processed potato dough into uniform, saddle-shaped chips. This innovation in snack food manufacturing aimed to reduce breakage and packaging waste while providing a consistent texture and flavor experience. The chips are stacked neatly in cylindrical cans, preserving their shape and freshness through airtight seals. Pringles' unique production method and packaging quietly revolutionized potato snacks, offering a softly crunchy, lightly salted treat that stands apart from traditional potato chips both in form and concept. Capri Sun, launched in Switzerland in 1969, introduced a novel beverage pouch packaging that combined portability, convenience, and freshness. The flexible foil pouch, filled with fruit juice concentrates and water, offered a lightweight, resealable alternative to bottles or cans. This packaging innovation made Capri Sun particularly appealing for children's lunches and outdoor activities, preserving the juice's flavors while reducing spillage. The pouch design incorporated a straw insertion point, gently inviting a slow, refreshing sip. Capri Sun's quiet introduction reshaped expectations for single-serve drinks with a soft balance of practicality and enjoyment. In 1970, Nissin Foods of Japan launched Cup Noodles, a portable instant noodle cup that combined dried noodles, seasoning, and dehydrated vegetables inside a disposable container. The invention was designed for quick preparation by simply adding hot water and waiting a few minutes. This product answered emerging demands for convenient, fast meals suitable for busy lifestyles and limited kitchen facilities. The container's insulating material kept the food warm while providing an easy-to-hold shape. Cup noodles softly transformed the instant noodle category into a handheld, self-contained experience, quietly changing eating habits worldwide with its simple, comforting warmth. During the 1970s in Japan, surimi, a processed fish paste, was industrially productized into imitation crab or kanakama. While traditional surimi has ancient roots as a preserved fish product, the modern, mass-produced form was developed to create a low-cost, shelf-stable seafood substitute. This processed paste, made primarily from white-fleshed fish, is flavored, colored, and shaped to resemble crab leg meat, enabling affordable seafood flavors in various dishes. The manufacturing processes involve washing, mincing, and mixing fish proteins with starches and additives to form a pliable, soft-textured product that quietly extended the culinary use of fish protein in everyday meals. In 1971, the second generation of pressure cookers, with enhanced safety mechanisms, became widely adopted in domestic kitchens across many parts of the world. Earlier versions had been used since the 17th century, but concerns over pressure-related accidents limited their popularity. The modern iteration introduced locking lids, steam release valves, and pressure indicators, allowing home cooks to prepare stews, legumes, and grains with increased speed while preserving nutrients. This advancement quietly reshaped home cooking, especially in time-sensitive households, by reducing long simmering hours into manageable meals. It brought a gentle transformation to kitchen routines, helping tenderize tough cuts or soften beans, not through fire, but with carefully contained steam and thoughtful design. By 1973, research into corn, a mycoprotein derived from the fungus Fusarium venenatum, began in the United Kingdom as part of a broader interest in sustainable protein sources. The fermentation process used to cultivate this protein-rich biomass required precise environmental controls and novel bioreactor technology. Developed in response to concerns about global food security, corn was not launched until 1985, but the R&D of the 1970s quietly set the foundation for a new category of meat alternatives. Unlike traditional plant-based substitutes, corn offered a chewy, fibrous texture resembling muscle tissue, all developed from a microscopic fungal source. It marked a subtle yet significant shift in thinking, from animals to fermentation, as a protein path. In 1974, the French chef Georges Pralou introduced the modern culinary world to sous vide cooking, applying it first at the Trois-Gros restaurant. Sous vide, meaning under vacuum, involves sealing ingredients in airtight plastic bags and cooking them slowly in water at precisely controlled temperatures. The method preserves moisture, texture, and flavor in a way traditional cooking cannot. Although the concept had earlier scientific roots, it was Pralou who adapted it for haute cuisine, ensuring foie gras retained its shape and delicacy. The technique's soft, measured heating echoes the gentle rhythms of slow change, one that moved from fine dining to industrial applications and eventually into home kitchens in later decades. In 1975, the modern polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, plastic bottle became an industry standard for soft drink packaging, particularly in the United States before rapidly spreading globally. Its combination of lightweight, impact resistance, and clarity made it a cost-effective replacement for glass in many beverage applications. Though PET as a polymer was discovered earlier, its safe use for food and drink relied on breakthroughs in blow molding and barrier properties. This soft revolution in packaging allowed soda bottling and distribution to scale with reduced transport costs, less breakage, and longer shelf life. Each crinkly bottle, though unassuming, marked a shift in how beverages were seen, held, and shipped. In 1979, Nutella began its widespread global export, gently spreading its sweet hazelnut cocoa flavor beyond its Italian origins. Though the original idea dates to the 1940s, when Pietro Ferrero created a gianduja-like spread called pasta gianduja during cocoa shortages, it evolved into Nutella in the 1960s and gained commercial momentum through careful branding and international licensing. By the end of the 1970s, its soft texture, shelf stability, and appealing sweetness made it a favored breakfast and snack spread across Europe, then globally. Nutella's quiet expansion story is one of nostalgia, efficiency, and marketing, blending tradition with creamy, smooth industrial consistency. In the year 1980, a Vietnamese-American refugee named David Tran began producing a hot chili sauce in California under the Huy Fong Foods brand. Though it bears the name Sriracha, it differs quite significantly from the Thai original, which is typically thinner, sweeter, and often more garlicky. Huy Fong's version uses jalapeno peppers and offers a thicker, more savory profile. It is not fermented like traditional Thai Sriracha, but instead relies on vinegar and sugar for acidity and balance. The iconic green-tipped squeeze bottle has become visually synonymous with the sauce, but the true transformation lies in how this distinctly American reinterpretation of a Southeast Asian condiment quietly became a culinary mainstay in restaurants and home kitchens alike. It traveled not with noise, but with quiet ubiquity, across tables, cultures, and taste buds. Elsewhere, in the same soft year of 1980, a beverage began to form at the bottom of a teacup in Taiwan, bubble tea, or boba, a drink with chewy tapioca pearls and sweetened milk tea. Its origin remains gently contested between two rival shops in Taichung, Shunshui Tang and Hanlin Tea Room. The first is said to have added tapioca balls to cold tea inspired by Japanese iced coffee, while the second claims to have used white tapioca balls resembling pearls. Regardless of the victor, the outcome is a global trend rooted in gentle experimentation. The pearls, boiled until tender, sink to the bottom in quiet clusters, while the tea, often flavored and shaken, dances above. Served through a wide straw, the drink offers a tactile rhythm of chew and sip, blending textures and cultures in a single cup that speaks softly of innovation. By 1982, a little white granule began to change the chemistry of sweetness. Aspartame, long studied and debated, received regulatory approval in the United States as a tabletop sweetener and soon became widely sold under the brand name Equal. Discovered decades earlier in 1965, aspartame is nearly 200 times sweeter than sucrose, meaning only a tiny amount is required to replicate the sensation of sugar. Its sweetness is softer, slower to rise, and leaves a lingering finish. Used in diet sodas and countless sugar-free foods, it quietly joined the global pantry of low-calorie solutions. Its structure, a methyl ester of a dipeptide, transforms in the body, breaking into its amino acid components. Despite its minute dosage, it has stirred more debate than sugar itself. Yet remained on the shelves, whispering its sweet science without much fanfare. During the year 1983, bakers received a new, time-saving companion in the form of instant yeast, sometimes called rapid rise or quick rise yeast. This innovation, refined in both France and the United States, allowed doughs to rise faster without the need for proofing in water beforehand. Unlike traditional active dry yeast, this instant variety is milled finer and contains more living cells per gram, allowing it to blend directly with dry ingredients. It simplified bread making in homes and factories alike, letting loaves rise like clouds with fewer steps. Though small, this granular marvel shifted baking rhythms around the world, reducing wait times without removing the quiet alchemy of fermentation. It is not loud yeast, but it is fast yeast, quietly so. 2 years later, in 1985, corn, the mycoprotein-based meat analog developed from Fusarium venenatum, launched commercially in the United Kingdom. Its journey had begun over a decade earlier as part of efforts to address potential global protein shortages. Grown through fermentation in bioreactors, corn's fine fungal fibers are harvested, pasteurized, and textured into meat-like forms using egg or plant-based binders. It does not sprout from fields or graze in pastures, but grows in the dark, humid stillness of nutrient-rich tanks. Lauded for its sustainability, its taste was designed to be quiet, neutral, adaptable, gently familiar. Unlike tofu or tempeh, it is not ancient, but modern, molded by science and industry into an edible whisper of protein for a changing world. In 1985, a new kind of silence entered the kitchen. Sealed within a tiny, metallic capsule, the Nespresso system, patented in Switzerland by Nestlé engineer Eric Favre, introduced the world to single-serve espresso brewed under pressure with remarkable convenience. The idea was not new. Espresso had long been cherished in cafes, but this capsule sought to bring café crema into homes without noise, steam, or skill. Each pod contained ground coffee sealed against oxygen, releasing its rich aroma only when pierced and pressed by the machine. The crema, foamy and fleeting, was not stirred by human hands but by mechanics and pressure valves, calibrated to echo barista-like extraction. It was espresso without the ceremony, and with it, the quiet era of pod-based coffee had truly begun, one gentle cup at a time. By the closing of the decade, in 1989, the curious compound olestra was gaining attention. Not yet on shelves, but inching toward them. A synthetic fat molecule, olestra would be approved by the U.S. FDA in 1996 after years of study and cautious scrutiny. Its secret lay in its indigestibility, designed so the human body could not absorb its calories. Fat without absorption. Taste without consequence. Or so it seemed. Used in snack foods like chips and crackers, it passed through the body swiftly. Its controversial side effects, including gastrointestinal disturbances, were quietly acknowledged on product labels with phrases like "may cause anal leakage," a term so clinical, it seemed almost whispered. The substance was a scientific marvel and a consumer quandary, a processed promise of guiltless indulgence. That left a complicated legacy on grocery shelves and in digestive tracts alike. The soft but precise phrase molecular gastronomy was first whispered into academic circles in 1990, co-coined by Hungarian physicist Nicolas Kurdi and French chemist Hervé This. It did not arrive with the clang of saucepans or the rustle of cookbooks, but through conferences and laboratory notes. This was not merely cooking, it was inquiry. A careful study of the transformations that occur during food preparation, why soufflés rise, how foams form, what gives yolks their gel. The term would later blossom into a culinary movement, influencing chefs who turned liquids into spheres, and vapor into flavor. Yet the phrase itself began gently, as a label for research, measured, methodical, and deeply curious. It was a science of the senses. Not to rush the palate, but to slow it, and let it wander softly. In 1991, a humble sweetness began to drift through Finland, one that did not spike blood sugar or decay teeth. Xylitol, a sugar alcohol derived often from birch bark or corn cobs, had been known for decades. But in this quiet year, it began to enter chewing gum on a broader scale. Unlike sucrose, xylitol is not fermented by oral bacteria, making it a kinder companion for teeth, reducing caries risk and encouraging remineralization. In gum, it adds a soft coolness on the tongue, almost minty by default. Its structure is gentle, with 5 carbon atoms. Sweet, but shy. As it spread across brands and countries, the xylitol gum quietly chewed its way into public health routines, changing not the taste of gum, but the way we chewed and smiled, just a little softer. By 1993, a glossy dark syrup began to appear in bottles beside olive oil and vinegar, labeled not as aceto balsamico tradizionale, which required long aging in wooden barrels, but as balsamic glaze. This modern reduction, often thickened with starches or sugar, was born of industrial kitchens and consumer convenience. Its creation was not slow, not aged over decades, but simmered and bottled in a matter of hours. Yet its shine, its sticky sweetness, evoked the illusion of ancient complexity. It drizzled across salads and strawberries alike, a finishing touch that whispered of the old world, while hurrying through the new. Traditional balsamic remains protected and rare, but the glaze, this friendly impostor, quietly democratized its flavor. A culinary shortcut. Softened and sweetened for shells. In 1994, inside a quiet laboratory at Lund University in Sweden, a humble cereal grain was coaxed into something new. Oat milk, what would become Oatly's signature innovation, was not born in a trendy cafe, but in a soft, scholarly pursuit of digestibility and dairy alternatives. By using enzymes to break down oat starches into natural sugars, and carefully blending the result with water and oil, scientists crafted a creamy liquid that resembled milk, but without lactose or cows. For years, this oat elixir remained a niche Scandinavian secret. Only by the 2010s did its popularity swell, powered by climate awareness, coffee culture, and gentle marketing. Still, its essence remains. A grain, soaked and softened, transformed into a gentle pour. For endurance athletes in the mid-1990s, eating mid-race was clunky, chewing and swallowing slowed the rhythm of exertion. In 1995, the GU Energy Gel product began changing that. A spoonful of smooth, carbohydrate-rich paste could now be squeezed directly into the mouth and absorbed rapidly. Made with maltodextrin, fructose, electrolytes, and sometimes caffeine, the gel bypassed digestion's delay. Though similar glucose formulations had appeared earlier in sports science and military rations, GU's packaging and marketing gave the format legs. Literally. Runners, cyclists, and triathletes soon adopted it globally. The gel was not just food, it was portable kinetic energy. In a pouch, designed not to satisfy hunger, but to sustain motion, one squeeze at a time. By 1996, a different kind of food packaging was slipping into kitchens around the world, smooth, flexible, and shelf-stable without refrigeration. The retort pouch, a laminated plastic-aluminum hybrid, had long served the military through MREs, meals ready to eat. But this year marked a turning point in its civilian adoption, especially in Japan, where shelf life and compact storage held great appeal. These meals are cooked inside the sealed pouch under high pressure and heat, preserving texture and flavor without added preservatives. Soups, curries, rice dishes, each now came tucked in pliable rectangles. The sound of scissors on foil replaced the clang of tin, and kitchens became ever quieter in their convenience. In the cool alpine air of Austria, a carbonated curiosity named Red Bull began flapping its wings toward global attention in 1997. Though energy drinks had existed previously in Japan under names like Lipovitan, Red Bull's packaging, flavor profile, and branding gave it international lift. Inspired by Thai functional drinks but reformulated for Western palates, it contained taurine, caffeine, B vitamins, and sugar, each balanced not for delight, but for alertness. The drink's slim silver and blue can became iconic, not because of its taste, but because of its effect. A modern stimulant in fizzy form, whispering wakefulness into an otherwise drowsy beverage aisle. From the quiet experimental kitchens of El Bulli in Spain, Chef Ferran Adrià introduced the world to an edible illusion in 1999, soft orbs of juice that mimic caviar. Spherification, a technique involving sodium alginate and calcium chloride, allowed liquids to be encapsulated within themselves using gentle chemical reactions. Rooted in older pharmaceutical applications, Adrià's kitchen work repurposed this method for gastronomy, presenting tomato water pearls, mango yolks, and bursts of olive essence. Each was served not for sustenance, but for surprise. Yet beneath the spectacle, the science remained calm and exacting. pH, viscosity, calcium ion balance, all had to align. It was food as chemistry, and chemistry as theater. Toward the close of the millennium, around the year 2000, a long-used nectar from agave plants, once fermented for pulque or distilled into tequila, was newly repackaged as a syrupy sweetener. Agave syrup, especially from blue agave, entered global health food markets as a low-glycemic alternative to cane sugar. Extracted through industrial hydrolysis of inulin-rich roots, the syrup's journey from ancient Mesoamerican heritage to Western kitchens was paved by both marketing and metabolism. While traditional uses of agave are centuries old, this bottled golden syrup, with its smooth pour and caramel-like hue, offered a modern sweetness, filtered and labeled to appeal to conscious eaters seeking alternatives. Ancient plant. Newly processed. In 2001, a bowl of rice became the battleground of science and survival. Golden rice, genetically engineered to produce beta-carotene within its grain, was developed by researchers in Switzerland and further trialed in the Philippines. The goal was not yield, but nutrition, a way to combat vitamin A deficiency, which causes blindness and death in many parts of the developing world. Unlike polished white rice, this golden variety gleamed with provitamin promise. Though not without controversy, the innovation stood as a conceptual leap, a staple food redesigned not for flavor or profit, but to carry nutrients deep into the daily diet. By 2003, a technique once confined to elite restaurant kitchens and scientific circles began inching closer to home use. Sous vide cooking, meaning under vacuum in French, had existed since the 1970s, pioneered by chefs like Georges Pralou and scientists alike. But consumer-friendly versions, such as rudimentary water baths and vacuum sealers, began quietly appearing in the early 2000s. The idea was deceptively simple: cook food slowly in a sealed pouch at precisely controlled temperatures. This gentle method preserved moisture, intensified flavors, and rendered even tough cuts tender. Though devices like the Sous Vide Supreme wouldn't formally launch until 2009, the home shift had already begun simmering. A quiet alchemy of flame and sugar made its way from the restaurant plate to grocery shelves in 2004. Crème brûlée, once the domain of white linens and polished silverware, began appearing in small ceramic pots, pre-made, chilled, and often paired with a packet of raw sugar and instructions to torch. Retail versions tapped into the romance of French cuisine while embracing the performative joy of caramelizing sugar at home. The dessert itself, with roots likely in 17th-century European kitchens, was not new. But its ready-to-burn incarnation marked the soft industrialization of indulgence, custard, democratized, and delivered in foil-sealed silence. In 2006, the tang of fermentation found new footing in American health food aisles. Kombucha, an ancient, slightly fizzy tea fermented with a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, had long been brewed in quiet kitchens. But companies like GT's Synergy helped propel it into the commercial spotlight, offering bottled varieties promising detox, vitality, and microbial richness. Though its origins trace back to China's Qin dynasty or possibly earlier Eurasian steppes, modern kombucha now came carbonated, flavored, and labeled. Refrigerated shelves grew crowded with it, echoing old-world processes with neon branding. A microbial tradition, rebottled for the probiotic-conscious consumer. By 2007, supermarket shelves began making space for something thicker, tangier, and unexpectedly booming, Greek-style yogurt. While the technique of straining yogurt to remove whey and intensify protein had been practiced for centuries across the Mediterranean and Middle East, it was brands like Chobani that transformed it into an American staple. The product stood apart, dense enough to hold a spoon upright, yet smooth, tart, and versatile. Sales surged as consumers embraced its nutritional profile, high protein, and low sugar when plain. What had been ethnically specific became fitness-forward, illustrating how ancient methods, when marketed just right, can quietly reshape the modern palate. In 2009, researchers at a small startup began isolating the secret to meat's distinct flavor not from muscle, but from molecules. Impossible Foods, founded by biochemist Patrick Brown, focused on replicating the iron-rich compound called heme, naturally found in animal blood, but also producible through yeast fermentation. This biotech pivot led to the development of a plant-based burger that mimicked beef's sizzle, aroma, and even color change on the grill. By using genetically modified yeast to produce leg hemoglobin, the company laid groundwork for a product that would officially debut in 2016, changing how meat alternatives were engineered, marketed, and understood. As smartphones restructured modern life, the food world quietly adapted with them. Around 2010, cloud kitchens, also known as ghost kitchens or virtual restaurants, emerged as a tech-driven business model. These were kitchens without dining rooms, built purely to fulfill delivery orders for online customers. Some housed multiple brands under one roof, optimizing staff and space for the booming demand in app-based meals. Though the term was new, the idea had roots in commissary kitchens and delivery services of the past. Now, AI, customer data, and platform integration shaped menus in real time, serving food not from storefronts, but from digital impressions. Founded in 2011, Beyond Meat began charting its own course in the growing field of plant-based protein. Its founder, Ethan Brown, aimed to recreate the texture and nutrition of meat using yellow peas, mung beans, and rice protein, without the use of soy or genetically modified organisms. Unlike Impossible Foods, Beyond Meat avoided heme, instead developing fibrous plant matrices that could be grilled, browned, and seasoned like real meat. The first products, including chicken strips and burgers, rolled out in 2013. Retail and fast food collaborations soon followed, making pea protein patties a fixture in freezer aisles and quick service chains alike. A slow-brewed revolution steeped into the mainstream by 2012, when cold brew coffee began appearing on shelves and cafe menus across the United States. Companies like Stumptown helped lead the charge, bottling smooth, less acidic coffee extracted over hours using cold water. Though this method gained popularity in the West in the 2010s, it wasn't new. Variants had long existed, including Kyoto-style drip towers in Japan and Dutch coffee traditions. What changed was packaging, convenience, and branding. Cold brew was repositioned not as a quirky technique, but as a premium, functional caffeine experience, less bitter, more palatable, and ready to pour. In 2013, a lab-grown hamburger was cooked and eaten publicly for the first time. Developed by a team led by Dr. Mark Post at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, the burger was composed of muscle cells cultivated from bovine stem cells in vitro. It was an expensive prototype, reportedly costing over $300,000, but it represented a proof of concept for cultured meat. Grown without slaughter, the project combined tissue engineering, cell culture, and media optimization. The event sparked widespread discussion about sustainability, ethics, and the scalability of lab-grown food, foreshadowing a decade of investment in meat alternatives grown from cells. When Soylent first launched in 2013, it sparked curiosity, criticism, and cult-like enthusiasm. Designed by software engineer Rob Reinhart, the powdered meal replacement promised a nutritionally complete shake, originally aimed at coders and tech workers seeking to minimize food prep. The formula was crowdfunded via Kickstarter, rapidly surpassing its goal and launching the liquid food era. The product, fortified with essential vitamins, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, drew its name from a dystopian sci-fi reference, though unlike its fictional counterpart, Soylent was vegan. Over time, the brand diversified into ready-to-drink bottles and bars, signaling a niche but lasting shift in food consumption patterns. In 2014, edible insects entered Western nutrition discourse in a big way, particularly through the introduction of cricket-based protein bars. Startups like Exo and Chapel helped drive the narrative, packaging crickets into powdered flour and blending them with dates, cocoa, and nuts. Insect consumption had been long normalized in many cultures worldwide, but this was one of the first attempts to reframe it for American and European consumers as an environmentally sustainable protein alternative. Crickets, high in protein and requiring far less land, water, and feed than livestock, became symbols of future-forward eating, even if widespread adoption remained gradual. As spiralizers gained traction in 2015, Zoodle zucchini cut into spaghetti-like strands, moved from niche health blogs into kitchens worldwide. While the practice of julienning vegetables into noodle forms predates the gadget by centuries, the popularization of spiralizers helped transform low-carb or gluten-free eating into something playful and visual. Influencers and wellness brands embraced zoodles as substitutes for pasta in dishes ranging from Alfredo to pad thai. What began as a simple kitchen hack became a full trend, influencing product packaging, restaurant menus, and even pre-spiralized grocery store offerings, as vegetable noodles carved out their own shelf space in the mainstream diet. Beyond Meat launched its flagship Beyond Burger into retail stores in 2016, cementing its position at the forefront of the plant-based protein movement. Unlike earlier veggie patties that leaned on beans or grains, this burger aimed to replicate the juiciness, texture, and even pink interior of beef using pea protein, coconut oil, beet juice extract, and other proprietary ingredients. Its success marked a shift in perception. Plant-based meat was no longer fringe or purely health-oriented, but instead offered environmental and ethical arguments with mass appeal. Grocery store placement next to real meat further blurred the line between alternative and traditional. In the mid-2010s, few kitchen gadgets sparked as much cross-demographic enthusiasm as the Instant Pot. While multi-cookers had existed for decades, the Instant Pot's 2016 sales spike coincided with rising social media engagement, particularly on Facebook, where fan groups shared tips, recipes, and modifications. Functioning as a pressure cooker, slow cooker, rice maker, and yogurt incubator in one, the appliance promised time savings and energy efficiency. Its programmable digital interface made pressure cooking less intimidating for home cooks, expanding its user base beyond traditional stovetop methods. It soon became a cultural phenomenon and remains a staple on wedding registries and countertop appliances. Just Egg, made by Eat Just, debuted in 2017 as one of the most promising plant-based egg alternatives. Instead of relying on soy or nuts, the company harnessed the gelling and binding properties of mung bean protein to replicate the taste, texture, and cookability of scrambled eggs. The formulation cooked up convincingly in pans, folded into omelets, and thickened like its animal-derived counterpart. Unlike some early egg substitutes, Just Egg was developed not just for baking but for direct substitution in traditional egg dishes. Its launch marked a broader expansion in plant-based innovation beyond dairy and meat, venturing into poultry analogs. By 2018, oat milk made a global splash, particularly through Oatly's expansion into U.S. cafes. Although oat milk was developed in Sweden in the 1990s, its widespread recognition accelerated once baristas adopted it as a dairy-free alternative for lattes and cappuccinos. Its creamy texture and ability to foam made it popular in specialty coffee circles. U.S. demand surged dramatically after appearing in high-end cafes, leading to shortages and increased production. Oatly's branding, minimalist and sustainability-focused, resonated with younger consumers. What began as a niche Scandinavian product rapidly grew into a mainstream staple, fueling the broader rise of plant-based dairy substitutes. The spicy, crunchy, umami-laden condiment known as Chili Crisp gained international traction in 2019, largely through internet buzz and growing diaspora exposure. While Lao Gan Ma had been widely known in China since the 1990s, Western awareness spiked due to viral social media posts, chef endorsements, and rising global interest in pantry condiments with bold flavor profiles. Variants began appearing in artisanal and fusion contexts, including in Western fine dining and fast casual restaurants. Although the sauce's base, fermented soy, oil, and chilies, has older roots in regional Chinese cooking, its global breakout is relatively recent, accelerated by cross-cultural culinary curiosity. During the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, a frothy, visually striking drink known as Dalgona coffee went viral on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. The drink, made by whipping instant coffee, sugar, and water into a thick foam and pouring it over milk, originated from a traditional Indian preparation known as Fantai Hawaii coffee or beaten coffee, and similar methods also existed in Greece and Macau. Its sudden popularity during lockdowns highlighted how simple recipes with aesthetic appeal could travel rapidly online. For many, making it became a soothing ritual during a time of uncertainty and isolation. Ultra-spicy hot sauces featuring peppers like the Carolina Reaper and Ghost Pepper began transitioning from niche heat challenge fare to more commercially viable condiments around 2020. Originally bred for peak Scoville levels, these cultivars were developed in the early 2000s but entered mass market shelves more recently through small batch bottlers and mainstream brands. Companies increasingly embraced these peppers for bold marketing, adventurous flavor profiles, and viral social media engagement. Reaper and Ghost-based sauces now appear in major retailers, pepper festivals, and restaurant chains, signaling how once extreme spice levels have become normalized in the competitive world of artisanal and novelty hot sauces. As global lockdowns spread in 2020, home sourdough baking experienced an explosive revival, with flour and yeast shortages appearing in many regions. The practice of cultivating wild yeast starters and nurturing them into loaves offered both a therapeutic distraction and a tangible sense of control during uncertain times. Social media filled with photos of crusty, deeply scored boule and tutorials on hydration ratios and fermentation timing. Though sourdough is one of humanity's oldest leavened breads, the pandemic gave it fresh cultural weight, turning baking into a shared global experience and rekindling interest in fermentation, artisanal food, and slower domestic routines. In 2021, Israeli startup Redefine Meat publicly demonstrated 3D printed meat prototypes, including steaks made using plant-based ingredients structured via additive manufacturing. Unlike extrusion or patty form formats, this approach aimed to replicate complex textures and muscle-like fibers by layering components like fats, proteins, and gels through a proprietary 3D printing system. Public tastings in Israel and Europe showcased the visual and textural accuracy of the products. While the flavor still relied on traditional food chemistry, the breakthrough lay in the structural fidelity. This development marked a leap in alt-protein realism, pushing meat analogs beyond ground formats into whole-cut territory. That same year, 2021, US-based company Perfect Day brought to market the first commercially available ice cream made using precision-fermented whey proteins, identical to those found in cow's milk but produced without animals. Using genetically modified microflora, typically trichoderma or fungi, the company expressed dairy proteins such as casein and whey through fermentation, followed by isolation and formulation. These proteins are functionally and nutritionally equivalent to their animal-derived counterparts, enabling applications in cheese, yogurt, and other dairy formats. Regulatory pathways in the U.S. permitted labeling these as non-animal yet dairy identical, making this one of the most advanced synthetic biology milestones in food to date. In 2022, the world saw a regulatory first. Cultivated chicken was granted market approval in both Singapore and, later, the United States. Singapore had already permitted limited restaurant sales of lab-grown chicken by Eat Just in late 2020, but formalized processes matured in 2022. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, both greenlit two U.S.-based companies, Upside Foods and Good Meat, for commercialization, with the first tastings and pilot restaurant launches occurring in 2023. These products, derived from real animal cells grown in bioreactors, avoid slaughter and are cultivated under sterile, monitored conditions with edible scaffolds and growth factors. By 2023, seaweed-based products, especially kelp jerky and seaweed bacon, began scaling from novelty items to sustainable snacks positioned for the mass market. Companies such as Akua, U.S., Atlantic Sea Farms, and Ocean's Halo pushed these salty, umami-rich items using ocean-farmed kelp, a zero-input crop that absorbs carbon and improves marine ecosystems. Seaweed bacon, typically made from dulse or other red algae, gained traction for its smoky crunch when fried. Though seaweed has been consumed globally for millennia, its transformation into shelf-stable, climate-forward snacks is a recent development, aligned with the rise of regenerative aquaculture and interest in ocean-based protein alternatives. In 2024, food tech startups and AI research labs began piloting AI-generated recipe kits and meal plans that used large language models and food-specific training datasets. These pilot programs, launched in global markets including the US, South Korea, and parts of Europe, leveraged AI not only to generate recipes but also to tailor them based on dietary constraints, regional preferences, and pantry contents. Some integrated vision models to scan ingredients and suggest uses. While some results were gimmicky, others showed promise in enhancing home cooking and consumer choice. AI-generated meals began appearing in ghost kitchens and personalized nutrition startups, pushing the boundary between tech and taste. As of 2025, cacao pulp, a sweet, often discarded byproduct of chocolate production, is being upcycled into sodas and other beverages as part of a rising sustainability movement. Companies in Latin America, Europe, and the US now use the tangy, tropical fruit pulp that surrounds cacao beans to create lightly carbonated drinks, targeting the market for natural energy boosters and zero-waste products. While small-scale experiments existed earlier, these beverages are now entering mainstream retail, aided by improved cold chain logistics and consumer demand for ethical, low-impact foods. The trend also supports cacao farmers by monetizing more of the fruit than just its seed. Oh dear, I guess I got a little carried away. My dear friend, let us rest. These ancient and new foods, they did not shout. They did not race. They simply became. Through heat, or time, or stillness. And you need not remember any of this. It's alright if it all drifts away. Like steam above a forgotten pit oven, curling softly into the night. If your eyes are closed, if your thoughts are drifting, then my job here is done for today. Thank you for spending this unremarkable moment with me. You have listened to The Sleepy Sloth, where uninteresting things become the softest lullabies.